Is as follows. We will have two keynote speeches delivered by two of our guests. Then we will have Q&A. The Q&A session, I hope that is going to be lively. We have an online platform where you can submit the questions and the speakers will be able to answer those questions. Otherwise, I will ask a few questions and then we will sit and look to each other, and that's not what we want. Once this is done, we will go to our first panel session and we talk about RPA implementations, challenges, lessons learned, and advantages. We will have 4 panel members, which will be together with me here on the stage. Then we have coffee break, and we have networking and tech fair, which is organized in the area to the right of the entrance. When we return from the event, we will go with the second panel, and we talk about next trends in RPA and what impact these trends have on various technology aspects. Without further ado, I want to invite here on the front together with me, Rob McCargo, Director of Artificial Intelligence for PwC. Please, Rob. And Boris Kramry, Chief Robotics Officer with UIPath. Please have a seat. In order to get the discussion going, we will have a quick video which we presented, and I hope this will illustrate why we are all here.
At some point, every company needs to revise its strategy to remain lean and manage costs. Managers face the challenge of meeting market and management expectations with limited resources. In any business as it grows, inefficiencies in business processes build up. Repetitive, mundane work is needed. Copying, pasting, checking, and the longer it lasts, the more errors occur. What if this part of the process could be automated? PwC has something that may help. RPA, or Robotic Process Automation. It's not about replacing human employees. RPA is an easily applied software which mimics users' actions and can effectively perform even complex rule-based processes. An employee trained by PwC doesn't need any assistance from IT specialists to create a robot which knows what to do. The robot performs its tasks quickly, efficiently, and without all the human errors. The robot works cross-functionally and across applications. It can access databases, extract data from multiple systems and web pages, or compile documents based on various data. Employees are free from the mundane and better motivated to focus on the tasks where you really need them. This also leads to more focus on the things which really matter. With the repetitive, mundane work automated, companies' efficiency rises. Up to 80% cost reduction. Quick return on investment. No costs of customizing existing or new systems. Rapid implementation. Scalable solutions. And employees can make the most of their potential. It's not a vision of the future. It's already happening.
So I hope this sets the stage properly, and now I hand it over to Rob to give his presentation. The clicker has some lag.
Thank you, Gabriel. Okay, hello all. It's actually a privilege to be here in Bucharest. It's my first visit. I just wanted to really paint a picture about the present, but also the future, and where the future of automation and augmentation is going to go to. This does bring robotic process automation into the equation, but also into my area, into artificial intelligence more broadly. I think it's important when we're talking about AI, though, to talk about what it is not. And there's so much noise in the market, there's so many stories in the press and on social media about AI. And I think what you find is that on the one hand, you have this quite utopian tech solutionism-led approach espoused by Silicon Valley, apply AI and it will solve all of our problems in life. And I think we've started seeing in the last year that this approach to moving fast and break things has not always led to great outcomes in society and in business. But also, I think the narrative is often dominated by this quite negative, quite dystopian approach to tech, how it's going to take away all of our jobs, how it's going to enslave humanity. And I think you hear the likes of Elon Musk espousing this slightly more negative view. And I think neither of these narratives help us to understand what this technology means today and where it is going in the next few years. I quite like this historical view. This is a picture of the late Douglas Adams from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fame. And he had a really nice set of 3 rules that he lived his life by. And rule number 1, he said, any technology that's in our lives when you're born is entirely natural. Any technology that's invented between then and the age of 30 is very creative and something you can base your entire career out of. But any technology invented after the age of 30 is against civilization and the end of civilization as we know it. But after 10 years, it normally works out okay after all. And I think that's quite a nice way of looking at this. We're talking about the 4th Industrial Revolution here. This is something that we believe is going to have significant impact on society and in business. But the way that we go about embracing technology to accelerate the 4th Industrial Revolution will have profound implications for better or for worse. I think also we need to take into account the broader array of technologies. This isn't just about AI and RPA. I think we're also looking at the impact of other technologies, such as drones, IoT, 3D printing, blockchain, and virtual reality and beyond. And the way that these technologies converge and will be working together in harmony will have a significant impact in the future. I think it's also important to understand what this technology is that we're talking about here. How do we define artificial intelligence and robotic process automation? I'm sure Boris will go into more detail here as the presentation evolves. But really technology that is able to sense and think and act and with a feedback loop continually learn and perfect itself, I think is going to be having a very, very big impact on business. But I think also we can categorize this by what these technologies are doing and augmenting and replacing in terms of human tasks. So on the one hand, the doing side of the equation, compliance tasks, administration, templates, production, etc., more of the repetitive, mundane types of tasks. And then the thinking side of the equation, the ones that are looking for patterns in data and anomalies and finding knowledge and retrieving that and creating narrative, and how we separate these 2 tasks out. And how we define this is quite important. How do we consider disrupting both the thinking and disrupting the doing is going to have a big impact on the way that business will grow in the future. So how do we automate with AI, and how do we augment with AI? Let's go back to that. I'm not sure if you agree with that definition, but we'll get that in the panel afterwards. I think it's also important to think about this in terms of the way this will unfold in terms of the impact on the workforce. Where are we now at this journey at the moment? We think that because AI is already in our lives, it's in our smartphones, it's getting us to meetings on time, it's answering where we want to view the next movie on Netflix. We can think of this as assisted intelligence. It's not intelligent in the way that we understand this, but it is providing great use and utility in a very particular narrow domain. I think where we believe that the development is going next is on this tipping point between assisted intelligence and augmented intelligence. How does this then bring together the best of human and machine to solve the hardest problems in business, and with it brings a whole host of new implications and opportunities? I think where sometimes that we jump too far ahead to is this long-term future where we're looking at autonomous intelligence, self-driving cars, surgeons that robotically perform procedures on you, maybe even self-driving auditors of the future, who knows. But I think this means that it might be a little way off yet. If the technology is not quite there, there's also issues around regulators, there's issues around public trust to fully unleash the power of automation technology as well. But for me, I think we're probably sitting on this cusp between assisted and augmented, and the decisions we make in business today in terms of how we shape this and govern this and implement this will have a big impact. I think it's also worth noting that the economic picture of this technology is huge. We launched a study at the World Economic Forum last year that tried to understand what automation technology such as AI would do to the global economy. So on the one hand, we believe AI drives this significant productivity boost as it's applied to our businesses, our workforces, and our factories and businesses. But also the opportunity with AI and automation technology is there to not just to hyper-personalize, but to super-hyper-personalize our goods and services so that they're bought more often and therefore consumption grows. And we think overall this could add an additional $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. You can see that this is a significant opportunity for countries such as China. I'll talk about China later on. In North America, again, a significant boost. And across Europe, around about 10 to 12% additional GDP. So you can start to see why governments are starting to wake up to this now. I'll talk about the politicians later. Don't really want to, coming from the UK, but this has been live streamed, oh good. But I think there is an issue around the exacerbation of wealth inequality. The way that we see winners and losers in this race, I think, is starting to bear fruit. But on the one hand, a huge economic opportunity. I think also people ask, well, where is this starting to happen? I was talking to Boris about this earlier. There's no surprise that financial services have been heavily invested in this technology a long time, whether it's algorithmic trading, whether it's in actuarial pricing and insurance. So financial services in banking, insurance, hedge funds clearly have been some way ahead of the pack for a while. But we are starting to see significant opportunities across the board. One sector that I'm particularly excited about is healthcare, with the ability to discover new drugs, the ability to diagnose rare diseases, and really provide significant opportunities across the whole sector and in pharmaceutical. We've spoken about automotive already, but really every sector stands to benefit from the impact of this technology. But then again, no sector is immune to this, and I think there is a risk that if people aren't at least starting to think about how to embrace this technology, there is a risk of being left behind. I think the opportunity, sorry, just going to wake up, to scale AI is significant. But we also ask this question about, well, why aren't we seeing this across the breadth of our business at the moment? And another survey we do every year at the World Economic Forum is the CEO survey. We've run this for 22 years in a row now. And the overall stat, which I thought was really interesting, was 85% of CEOs globally say that AI will have a significant impact on their business in the next 5 years. But only, and if this was the UK data, only 2% of them could say that they're adopting this across the whole breadth of their business. So clearly there's something holding back technologies from adopting this tech. And I think there is an opportunity here with RPA leading to AI adoption. The way the two work in hand will be quite powerful. But above and beyond this, there's a number of issues around why AI is not scaling. We need obviously to consider the access to data and quality of data. There's a big demand for the talent now, data science and machine learning capability. Also working out where to start as well is really important. And you can, in your businesses, come up with hundreds of use cases over the course of a few weeks. How do you pick the right one is really important. Also, I think who you partner with is important. There was a really eye-catching study by a venture capital company about a month ago. I don't know if anyone saw this. And they had analyzed all of the AI startups across Europe, several thousand startups. And 40% of these AI startups had no AI. So you can see that there's this risk of hype that can lead you to working with the wrong type of organization, to offering false promise about the reality of this technology, and therefore working with the right partner is really important. I think also with AI, though, it brings with it a whole host of new considerations that can lead to additional enterprise risk. We know that at a stage where the public's trust in big technology and big business is at an all-time low, is there a risk that AI can amplify this even further and erode trust even further? There's issues in particular with regards to AI around the amplification of bias, discrimination, the lack of transparency, And also the lack of global governance and rules and regulation by which to adopt the technology is a hot area and something I work on quite closely. We also know that AI has not always gone to plan. Apologies to Microsoft colleagues, but this is a good example to talk about with the Tay robot, of course. So I think it's a great example of an adversarial attack where the public had interfered with this bot on Twitter and led to it leading to poor outcomes. But also, wherever you look, I used to use this slide quite a lot to show that AI had not always been adopted very well. But this slide in particular, you might not be able to read the detail. This was just a slide by a think tank in New York last year that looked at 2018 and looked at all the developments that had happened in the world of technology and AI in that year. And you can see there's a whole host of things that are a bit alarming, whether it's self-driving cars leading to fatalities, whether it's the outbreak of issues around privacy, cybersecurity implications, a whole host of issues around facial recognition technology. I'll happily share this slide afterwards, Gabriel, as well. But you can see that if we're starting to move the technology application to use cases of very little consequence in our lives, how do you get the next movie recommended on Netflix? Moving through to use cases of significant consequence around diagnosing diseases, being issued credits or mortgages, leading to criminal justice implications about who's let out on jail or not. You can see that we have to get this right, and we have to adopt this in the responsible way. A big area also we talk about, and the video touches upon this. I'm not sure why the video has no faces on these cartoons. I thought it was an interesting one. But I think there is a risk that we don't consider the jobs in the right way. So we think from our studies that up to 30% of existing jobs could become susceptible to automation and AI in the next 15 years. So a significant proportion of the workforce could be displaced. However, this also doesn't take into account this has a big variable in terms of geography, it has a big variable in terms of industry sector and gender and educational attainment. And also from an economic point of view, if you also have this opportunity to drive massive economic growth from AI, it also brings with this opportunity to drive labor demand as well. So it's not, you see this in the paper, you know, robots will take away the jobs. It doesn't really work that way in our opinion, but it's very hard to translate this to the media. So we think on the one hand, yes, major change will occur to the workforce in 10, 15 years or so and onwards from there. But if we get this right, if we adapt our education system the right way, if we change public policy the right way, and also within your world, if we adapt the right approach to lifelong learning and training and development within our companies, this can negate the offset and the displacement of jobs to the point where we could even see no impact in the future. In China, we think actually it leads to an additional growth of jobs as well. So there is an opportunity to reshape the workforce, but we have to start thinking about this quite soon. I spoke about China before. I was there last year, and this was just a snapshot of a few stories about how seriously China are taking this opportunity. So they can see this opportunity to add 26% GDP growth to their industries. They know that they have to equip their workforce for this. There's one city in Tianjin where they're looking to educate 100,000 AI practitioners just in that one university, equipping their school children with the capability and the knowledge. They're also putting facial recognition cameras into the front of classrooms, not just to monitor pupils' attendance, but their attentiveness as well. So I'm thinking of doing that in my keynote speeches in the future to see who's engaged and who's not on Twitter. But you can see there's a massive opportunity that China are taking quite seriously. We have to move quite quickly in Europe to keep pace with this. Again, some stories from that one particular week. JD.com in China, it's like the Chinese Amazon. They just launched a fulfillment center in Shanghai that can process and distribute 200,000 parcels a day, and it employs 4 people, and their sole purpose is to look after the robots. So you can see this is already starting to occur. We're seeing a massive opportunity applying this in healthcare, in radiology. I don't know if anyone saw the story from last year, the Google Duplex. Anyone see this as well? This was a demo that Google ran where their bot telephoned a middle American hair salon and successfully navigated with this woman on the end of the phone to book a hairdressing appointment. And it was quite a complicated story, backwards and forwards. No, I can't do Thursday, I can do Wednesday. Lots of different dialect changes. And it successfully managed to book this appointment. And at no stage did the woman know that she was speaking with an AI. So you can see that if you have call centers and customer service departments, this is already starting to scale quite quickly. And we need to think about this. So anyway, I'm always concerned that this sounds like I'm a bit negative about AI. I'm really quite positive about it, but with a huge caveat, because I think if we get all these things right, if we think about how we adopt this in the smart way, actually it can make business far better, more efficient, more successful, and fairer and more equitable. And I've seen these opportunities in terms of like recruitment and HR to really make a difference and make the world a fairer place as well. So I think the messages to business leaders that we think in terms of the human impact are quite clear. So we know that we're not going to see this taking hold very, very quickly. It will start happening over the course of the next few years. But the decisions you make in business today, I think, are really important. I think you need to act now in terms of thinking about the next 5, 10, 15 years in a time when it's very hard to think about the end of the year or the week, if you're talking about the UK, or the day, in fact. You can think about taking a big leap. You've got to take some no-regrets moves. But I think also the more that these stories will start to grow in the press and in social media, I think the more anxious your workers get. And I think the companies that own that debate, the ones that are able to say, jobs will always change. We can't protect whole jobs, but we can protect people. We're putting your interests first and preparing you for this future, and build that clear narrative and own that debate, I think will have a degree of competitive advantage in the future. So people talk about the skills we think will be required. We may be able to talk about this on the final panel as well, won't we, as well? So the World Economic Forum, again, have their roster of the skills that are going to grow in demand in the next 5, 10 years or so. And these are the top 10. I won't read them all out, but you can see right at the heart of them, the vast majority are very much the people skills. People call them soft skills. I think I've heard them referred to as power skills as well. But, you know, negotiation, emotional intelligence, creativity, critical thinking, a whole host of, you know, these skills that we think we don't necessarily prioritize in our school education system at the moment. And it's less, as you can see, about the technology, interestingly. We know we'll have a big demand for robotics engineers, machine learning engineers, data scientists, and technology consultants. But we also know that we're going to need a bigger growth in these human skills as the technology starts to expand as well. A colleague of mine said this last year, a guy called Blair Shepherd, and I quite like this because it resonates with me about my own relationship with education. And I always thought of education as something that you just get out of the way when you're a child and then an early adult, get the degree, get into the workplace, and then continue to grow your career. And I think the way that this is going to unfold, the way that AI and automation will grow, I think will require us to continuously adapt. And also thinking about the way we change our education system. It's not about learning, but it's learning how to learn that will determine how successful people are in the future. We're not going to be able to be complacent about this, and we have to think about this as a lifelong endeavor. It's not about getting educated and then that'll be it. And I think for me, the more I've kind of worked in this field, the more I have rediscovered this love of learning. And I really can't get enough of it now. So I think that ability and aptitude and attraction towards continually learning is going to be really important in the future. So just to finish my session, I thought I'd just tell a quick story about how this affects my own life and my children. And I've got 3 young children who are 9 and 7 and 3. And I often go around the world talking about the AI and robotics at events, and often sitting in the audience and hearing great content from other speakers as well. And I often sort of come home at the end of the week and have my brain full of these ideas and what the future might mean. And I came back from one of these events about 18 months ago, and I was sitting there chatting to my son, who was 6 at the time. And I said to Dylan, what do you think you're going to be when you grow up? And he said, Daddy, I think I'm going to be a train driver. And I didn't think, I just burst out laughing. I said, well, the robots will do that. You won't be able to be a train driver, Dylan. And he cried. And ran off to his bedroom, didn't see him again, and he was not happy with me the next morning at breakfast either. But it did get me thinking, actually, we do need to think about the way that we're talking to our children about what the future might hold. I think in the past we decided they should be something and then pushed them off to school to become an engineer or something. And I think this is going to change quite a bit. So I thought, right, we need to continue this conversation. The following day, I sent him off to school to get out a book from the school library on technology. I wrote technology onto a bit of paper and gave it to him, and he took it back to school. And he came back the following day, and we were sitting down doing bedtime reading, and we opened this book, and the first chapter was how to send a fax. You can see the boy's letter is made into a signal by this fax machine. I thought, this isn't good. If we're entrusting our child's preparation into the schooling system, and they're talking about technology that's 30 or 40 years old, we're clearly not preparing them the right way. So that wasn't a particularly positive start to the conversation. So I thought, right, I might have to take some responsibility here myself. And in my line of work, I get to see some pretty cool things and some good technology. And I would encourage everybody to look at this if you want to take a note of this. So MIT in America, they have a department called the Media Lab. And this Media Lab, a number of academics wanted to understand what the future would look like with driverless cars. And if driverless cars have to make split-second decisions about what to do in a different situation, they need to know what ethics that you want them to live by and abide by. So they created something called the moral machine, and you can go onto the website, just go MIT moral machine. And what this does is it poses a number of different ethical situations of what a self-driving car might face in different situations. And you have to decide what to do. And what they do is they then crowdsource across the world how different countries deal with the different scenarios to give them some ideas about how to train the cars. I mean, it's a little bit ethically dubious. But anyway, I thought it's quite an interesting way of explaining to young children what the future might look like and how powerful technology could be. So I decided to let the kids play this game, and this is what they decided to do. So this is a real scenario of the kids playing this game. You can see here there's 3 middle-aged women and 2 children driving in this car, and the car is going to hit this barrier and will kill all those people in that. And crossing the road here are 4 elderly people and a woman, and they're crossing the road illegally, and you have to decide whether the car stays and kills the occupants in that car or swerves and kills these people. So would anyone like to guess what my children decided to do? Hands up for stay, hands up for swerve. Swerve? They swerved. The old people get it, unfortunately. Now, for the more geeky in the room, like myself and Boris, what it does is it produces dashboard analytics of your propensity to save certain life over others. So this is what my children thought. They have a strong preference for preserving the lives of dogs over humans. They definitely prefer younger people here. Grandma gets killed the most. But actually, in defense of my parenting skills, they uphold the law. So clearly that's quite a good measure of my fatherhood after all. So anyway, this is really cool, and we have these debates at home, which sounds a bit weird, but we like talking about this, and what the impact of AI might mean in the future. I mentioned before that then about 18 months ago, the politicians globally started waking up to AI, because it's kind of a cool thing to be associated with, but it will have these massive society-wide implications as well. So they decided to set up a group in the UK, a parliamentary group that I joined the board of, and I had to go into the Houses of Parliament to explain to politicians what is AI. You can imagine that was quite a hard task. So I prepared a perfectly credible set of reports to go in, and I thought this is not really winning any hearts and minds over. So I thought I'll recruit the children to help me to prepare this presentation. And we spoke about AI, and if robots had brains, what would they decide to do? What would be the positive upsides? What could be the risks? How should I tell these politicians what to do? And as I was leaving the house the next morning, I left the house, and my daughter handed me this bit of paper and said, "Daddy, go and take this to the bosses of the country. We've written robot rules." And these are the robot rules. And actually, there's quite a lot of sense in these. You know, bad people shouldn't build robots. We've seen examples before of where the values and the biases within humans, when used to train AI, can be amplified and lead to discriminatory outcomes. We've seen some pretty stupid uses of AI, and therefore, the people who are entrusted in building this, who I should add are often white and male, are going to have a big impact on society. We need to professionalize that industry. We have to have oversight. We have to have inspection and certification, and it has to be raised in terms of a profession. There has to be an off switch. There shouldn't be bombs in robots. I've explained that this one we're breaking with drones already. And then robots shouldn't look like humans. Has anyone seen this Sophia robot doing the rounds? You've seen it at these conferences, you know, this latex thing. I've got kind of a running vendetta against this thing. But if you combine robots that look increasingly like humans with ones that increasingly sound like humans, like Google Duplex, you've got significant implications in terms of trust and deceit, in terms of the impact with citizens. So I think maybe not this year, but in the years to come, businesses, as they start to adopt this tech, are going to have to think about labeling and being very clear with their customers and their workforce about when they're dealing with technology and when it's dealing with humans. So anyway, I tweeted this. This was a phenomenally successful tweet. It got picked up all around the world. I was going home the next night and saying someone in Bulgaria has commented on your tweets. You know, kids, they were quite excited about it. And someone suggested it's like an upgrade to Isaac Asimov's 3 Rules of Robotics. And then someone, I don't know where they were from, they tweeted and criticized the rules, saying there were holes in the argument. I said, there were 6 and 8. You know, don't expose your children to social media, it's insane. But it was quite a nice way of thinking about how do I bring the children into the conversation. You know, in summary, I think I'm very excited about the impact of automation technology and AI. I think we've got an opportunity to really solve some of the hardest problems in business, society, thinking about the applications to accelerating towards the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. We hope it will make us healthier and wealthier and more efficient. But we're also doing this today slightly blindfolded. And we have to kind of go about embracing this technology fully aware of what the opportunities can be, but what the risks are going to be. And we also have to think about, we might not necessarily see all the opportunities and the benefits. It will be the next generation. So can we look our children in the eye today and then in 15, 20 years' time and say, we made the right call with the limited knowledge that we had? So I think my final closing argument is to say, don't listen so much to the technology leaders. I think we're starting to see that their arguments are wearing a little bit thin. Maybe take some historical context with the likes of Douglas Adams and understand how technology has grown and evolved in the times gone by. But definitely listen to Dylan, Neve, and Elodie McCargo. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rob. I have 2 quick questions for you, and in the meantime, I hope the audience is thinking about other questions. So I heard you saying that AI and RPA go hand in hand. How deep can this go?
By the way, I always put a slide of my children up because it means that my questions are far easier to answer. People are nicer to me. I mean, I think we're already starting to see AI and RPA starting to come together as well. But I think it's about how do you look at an end-to-end process, and Boris will be able to answer better than me, and understand which bit of the process is appropriate for RPA and which bit is appropriate for AI. And I think we often commonly refer to it as intelligent automation. If it's a back-office finance process, does this part of the process, I don't know, if this invoice reconciliation suits RPA? Is this internal chatbot useful in a finance context for some sort of cognitive tool? Which bit should never be automated for several years because it's too regulatory sensitive? So I think the 2 of them hand in hand are already starting to demonstrate value, but it's not about starting with the technology first. I think technology lasts is the best way.
Okay, and last question, from me at least. Was it easier to explain to the UK Parliament about AI versus maybe Brexit?
Nothing. There's no super intelligence in the world that will ever be able to understand Brexit. So politicians have no hope at all.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Boris, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see an AI that does Brexit. It probably comes up back with a more appropriate decision. But the amazing thing about this, you know, what we've seen, the decision, just think about it. I mean, we step in our cars and we drive and we never really consider the situation that we have to face a decision to either, you know, save our lives or drive over other people or whatsoever. Here will be lifted into an abstract level. Yeah. An abstract level that even, sorry, is it better like this? Yeah. Okay. Abstract level that even kind of children certainly kind of start thinking about it. That's what AI is giving us. It lifts us up to a different level. I'm going to talk a bit about the practical side of AI, exactly how to integrate AI. But before that, I'm also going to talk about automation. Because one of the key things when you talk about AI is it's kind of neglected the fact that AI as itself has no legs. You have to either integrate it into an application that you design for the AI capability, or you apply it to something that enables legs. And that's exactly what RPA is doing. So RPA is like the best foundation to put that in. And that's what I'm going to talk about. What I always have in the beginning, I don't know, how many actually do you know UIPath? I mean, question maybe in Romania is a bit, everybody knows it maybe?
I think everybody knows.
Oh, wow. So I can skip those slides very quickly. I'm going to talk about automation first. This is a vision and also an opportunity. So I'm coming more from the automation angle going into AI. So just for the ones who don't know UIPath, we are we're actually the fastest growing software business in the world. And it's really, it's kind of come to us like a phenomenon. And you can be very proud because it's actually all created here. 10 Romanian people in an apartment have, you know, kind of created that technology that then is so powerful that, in fact, it's so applicable that it, you know, meets a lot of demand. And one of these people who've been in these 10 people in this apartment is actually sitting right here, which is Razvan's team. Yeah, we've grown, so we are now 2,700 people. When I joined, we were 120 people. And I was looking after the product roadmap, vision, and marketing. Now I'm looking at immersion labs, so kind of bringing it into, you know, not just tell, but make a show. And it's very unusual that in these 2 years, we've grown like so globally, so fast. That's quite an impressive speed. And we've kind of, our technology is also that sound that we, you know, become the leader in this particular area. As you see, is, you know, kind of from analysts that kind of looked at the various products in this field and concluded that we are in the leading company actually there. But this is also, you know, kind of supported by independent views. So if you look at Gartner Peer Insights, G2 Crowd, IT Central Station, all these reviews and so forth, they're done by people who apply it and then give that feedback. And it's quite interesting. We have a net promoter kind of score. What does it mean? It means how often are people talking about it? How often is it kind of being, you know, mentioned, applied, and so forth in the internet? And just to give you an idea, 68. What does that mean? So Apple has 70, and we have 68. For a company that's born out of Romania, this is really amazing. And that also gives a lot of credit for the technology that we are offering. So let's talk about RPA. So the market is booming, and if you look at the key analysts that, you know, give their assessment, different views. So Forrester has kind of the highest views. IDC, and of course HFS always wants to be very, very critical. But the key point is that we believe actually that the market is much bigger because we see it in our own growth, and we believe that actually the market is far more underestimated. And that's something that we can see very much of from the demand that we see in the market. RPA is also not just a band-aid for, oh, we don't have an API, why don't we use RPA? So automate the user interface. It has become actually, as these surveys show from Everest Group, a proof point that it's a strategic technology. It's a technology that is easy to apply and to integrate. You can integrate, you can trigger up APIs in the same way as you do with API management, plus you can actually very easily automate the layer of the human activity on applications, across different applications. So it's not a technology that is going to disappear. That technology is actually going to stay there. In fact, it can become a far more important role in the center. Now let's look at automation and how is automation applied. And we see automation right now in kind of 3 levels. So if you think of the mass of very tiny but very effective automations, that's kind of the bottom one. That's the one that is maybe a particular sequence of tasks I'm automating. These are tasks I'm doing. These are my fingers and toes, basically. And then we have process automations. Here we have a process end-to-end. We have handoffs between an automation, between a human, and so forth. So it's quite complex. But there's even another level which is more strategically different, which is kind of a company-wide digitization. That could be really like an entire end-to-end service. If you think of, I don't know, delivering a particular service in insurances, delivering a whole service. This has multiple process automations, handoffs, and multiple points. And this is how we kind of see the automation pyramid. So interestingly, of course, the big amount of automations are in the fingers and toes. They may not be the ones that are kind of the most impacting ones, but they are the ones that actually drive a lot because they impact us most. They impact our daily work most. So when you look at this from that concept, basically both kind of implementation efforts come from top down and from bottom up. So if you think of, here PwC, for example, will help to say, let's take it out of this tactical area. People very easily, our software is so easy to use, so you can install it and do almost a self-POC. Actually, this is one of the reasons how we're growing, because people in the business, they just download the software, they record themselves, they have created their first automation, and there you go. And they show that to the management. The management says, wow, this is impressive. We should do that in a large scale. But that's very tactical, kind of, starting with that. It's more interesting you have to apply, of course, automation on a bigger scheme like you do a digital transformation. So you have to strategically look at it, how to drive this particular development. So this is where, consulting companies will help kind of bringing it into the strategic level and giving the right direction of finding the right largest impacting opportunities. But there's a lot of task automation that comes from bottom up. That's the one that may be too tiny for kind of a consulting organization to focus on, but that's something that kind of is more for us self-driven. And also considering the task automation here is if, for example, I'm automating the HR onboarding process, for example, complex process, lots of handoffs, goes through multiple systems, brings immediately significant improvement and kind of turnaround savings in terms of time and handling. But does it really impact me as a normal worker? Is it really changing my way of working? No, it's actually not. So that's where basically the whole task automation aspect comes into play. So if you think about it from a kind of value versus, amount of opportunities perspective, so, the strategic one, the ones in the top corner, you find these are the big juicy ones here, and you find the departmental kind of process automations. These are kind of typical area you concentrate on large programs, a lot of change management and so forth, and focus on that. Whereas there's a bottom-up automation space. These are these fingers and toes automation where you actually need to democratize and enable people to do their own automation, and that will make a big difference. And there's a lot of personal automations in there that don't impact anyone else, just impact me because I'm creating them for my work, and it makes my work more efficient. It's almost like looking at productivity tools like Microsoft Office. So if you think about PowerPoint and all these tools, they all made us more effective. And of course, they also raised expectations on a new level, right? I mean, if you have someone employed who doesn't know how to drive a PowerPoint or can't use Excel, that's kind of almost unthinkable. So in the same way, automation will enter this part. So I look at it from a kind of taking that same pyramid and splitting it up in 4 levels. And in these 4 levels, I'm converting the top level saying, that's actually a service automation, a very complex process chain of automation, but I can connect it to service levels. And then I have, on the bottom part, 2 kind of different ways. I have a shared task automation. So if I do a particular task that actually many others are doing, then and others want to use, then I bring it into kind of a controlled setup. What that means is you have a space on the bottom part, which is the personal task automation, which I don't need to control, which I can actually offer people to, make their work, kind of automate that and manage that themselves. This is something that I don't need to manage. But as soon as it is a shared task, it's something that impacts many more people, then I'm actually needing to put the necessary control to it. And that's if I think scale and scalability of automation going ahead. So this is kind of how we see it. And this is kind of the automation first vision that we have. That means a robot for every person. Everyone should have his own robot, should be able and enabled very easily to think, how can I automate first before thinking, how do I do this task? And robots, in order to do that, they have to support all kinds of different models. Just to give you an idea how different kind of models can you drive, I'm talking here attended automation, which is basically on my desktop, and I have that as my own robot that I can trigger things and automate things. And I have an unattended robot that is somewhere in a virtual desktop in the background. I can make them work together. I can make my attended robot work sequentially. I can make them all work together in a sense of the robot, the attended robot watching what I'm doing, helping me actively, triggering a robot, an unattended one in the background to actually gather more information. So you see, these kind of scenarios, these are the powerful scenarios that really will kind of make a change and impact our work. Coming to AI, so we did kind of in our developer conference, we asked the question, what are the kind of biggest inhibitors or challenges around large-scale RPA implementations? And it was quite interestingly that everyone says, oh, the intake of unstructured data is one of our key capability, which narrows down to kind of a key AI capability that people are looking in the core point around automation. Interesting though, I mean, it was a developer conference, so we asked technical people. Of course, they are giving a technical kind of assessment. If I would place the same questions with business people or kind of people who implement automation, the scoring would have been kind of definitely shifted. But it's all around kind of, how do I standardize? How do I kind of, get most of scope to automate? And how do I handle scale? So the way we see AI is we call it practical AI. So we see, first of all, RPA is emulating humans. For that, we need one core skill, we need computer vision. The better the computer vision is, the more accurate we can be, and the more kind of more mature our automations will be. Still, they're rule-based, but the ability to identify each object on the screen, and no matter whether the screen or object changes, the logic still is there, and the robot is not confused. That's kind of the key thing. We are going towards the assisting. So we actually see, autonomy of robots. That's something that is really a bigger topic. That is, all your points about ethics and so forth. That's the scary part. We're just seeing it really as a tool in terms of where do we need it in order to automate better. And we see that robots, the embedded skills that our robots will have are kind of 4 key skills. It's about visual understanding, identifying, extracting, from paper, using intelligent OCR and so forth, understanding documents, so also the semantics. So here's a document, what's the intent of the document, what are the important data points I need to extract in order to continue processing it. The process information itself, understanding, what kind of process, how do we work, how do we optimize operations, and last but not least, conversational. Conversational also, again, it's NLP, it's language, but conversational is a bit different because you have to kind of operate in a dialogue. So what a person has said in the beginning may have a particular context later on at the end that needs to be extracted. The other part we see is that it needs to allow ingestion of a lot of different technologies. Just to give you an example on intelligent OCR, one of the leading intelligent OCRs here is Abby. And Abby is great, and it's very also very powerful, large scale of documents needing to be extracted, but it works on a template basis and applies combined with using a kind of a narrow AI in order to identify which template is best to take or doing some slight modifications. There are other technologies like Ominous, for example, which is a pure kind of deep learning system and model underneath. So here you have no restriction around templates or whatsoever. It's far more capable of handling and extracting information, but it needs to be trained, and so it needs far more time. What I'm trying to say is today we have many, many kind of narrow AI solutions, and depending on the requirement, you have to integrate the appropriate technology. So we do that with UIPath Go so that you can import them as ready-made skills. Plus, you may even have your own kind of prediction models and so forth that you have created, and you want to embed those. So all these components need to be a key part of what we are basically integrating. And we want to make it as easy as possible with what we call drag-and-drop AI. So you take a model, you take a particular capability, you just drag into your workflow and apply that. Where we apply this today, we have already a version, a community edition that is in a preview, which is capable. You take a screenshot, and because of a deep learning trained database or model that we have underneath, we are actually able to identify each object. It's trained on Windows surfaces as well as Linux surfaces. So if it's a Windows surface, it will identify each of these fields, and you can just basically take that capability, put it in such a workflow, and then you can select any kind of component you want to have on the screen. If you think about it, what it means you can take a document with screenshots and then convert it into a workflow, automated workflow very, very quickly. So this is kind of the key thing what we're saying. So again, coming back to the point of RPA. RPA is not just kind of a band-aid, it's something bigger. You can basically combine all the existing different systems of engagement or systems of record, and AI is a component that we just integrate into this in a natural setup. So it's kind of like the glue and enables something bigger that you can do with it. So one of the best examples in the lab that we showed, we actually used Druid technology. So it's a pure chat interface. So a person who wants to ask for a leave request, just chats and says, I want to have that defect. All the checking in the background, in the application, how many days this person has left, who's going to be the backup, and all that is all done by the robot. And all the people have is a user interface they just talk to. Now, the powerful thing about that is that you can have multiple applications, processes, whatever, behind there, but you're talking to it in natural language. And this is where, you know, we think AI is going to be solving the cognitive step, so how we process information. And yes, we believe also, very much in line with what Gardner says, that, you know, RPA will become like a mainstream and will evolve far more in being just something that is kind of the glue in the core. So to end it with our vision, we believe that the automation first and our technology will basically be something that will be like a tool, like productivity tool of Microsoft, that you just have on your desktop and you can apply, and everybody will be able to actually learn to apply this. And they will have integrated components of AI that are important for processing data or unstructured data human produce and humans would deal with. And that's basically our vision. And with that, I thank you. I can't do a nice anecdote like Rob did, but there you go. This is a bit kind of a summary of where the automation first vision lies. Thank you.
Thank you, Boris. Thank you so much. It was very interesting. Please, this is the online platform that we are using to ask questions. If you connect your smart device to this website, then you insert the code on the screen. Then I can get on my mobile the questions for these two gentlemen. And let me just start the session by just asking Boris one thing. So I often interact with, or we often interact at PwC with clients, and from time to time they ask us, if I have this application and I use RPA, why do I have to collect the data from the screen? Why can't I connect the robot directly to the database? And I think this is, in some instances, a misunderstanding, but let me ask this question to you.
That's interesting, because that's a typical question you get either from the IT department.
Yeah.
But they're technically skilled. They can easily, for them, API management was the solution of all problems, but it was just for them and not for the people in the business being able to find and create the solutions. So what RPA actually enables is bringing that together. So you can basically combine RPA with the API management, so it actually serves, you know, both purposes. So that makes it very powerful. So what's kind of being is the oversight here in this thing is basically understanding the real need of business people is to find a fix to automate their work in order to make it, you know, very applicable automation, and not just depend on someone to program some script or so forth.
Okay, that was clear. And the question is, I liked a lot from your presentation the perspective of dividing the automation between shared automation, service automation, and personal task automation, which I believe currently it's something that's emerging, and I don't see it so often for our clients, but it's very interesting food for thought, and maybe this should be encouraged, that indeed, yes, we as a firm, we have, for example, licenses for UIPath robots, as well as we have for Microsoft Office. So people are encouraged to automate tasks, but right now what we see on the market is more on the, let's say, business automation side and less on the process. So maybe you can give a few words there.
Yeah, I think it all, you know, comes with the fact that if people really understand the ease of use of the automation and they feel very comfortable with it, that's actually when they start to explore. And I think as we don't like to be controlled. And it's you know, the point of democratizing and make it so easy is that, you know, out of that ability, this new tool that we can apply, if there's something good, important that is there to be shared, it will be shared. And in order to drive it, we need to see from a technology vendor, how can we enable more this kind of bottom-up automation? We see customers who have automations created, and then they come, why are you not using them? And they say, oh, it's quicker this way, because we are people of habit, right? But if they would have created those automations, these little ones, or these kind of, they may become bigger ones, then it's a totally different thing, you know?
Okay. Thank you much. So the questions started to come in, and one of them is, what are the top 3 skills for an RPA developer specialist? So who wants to answer that?
Top 3 skills. It's interesting. So it's probably one skill is you have to be able to understand a bit of logic on, you know, so kind of flows, and basically it's more process knowledge and a bit of a capability of, you know, to think in a structured way. That is for someone who really applies it from his process and subject matter expert background to create RPA. If you want to be like a super RPA programmer, then yeah, the word already programmer, you got to be a little bit more of a programmer. And you may also need a bit of an understanding of how to handle data. So this is, you know, where the other side of data science and AI comes a bit into play. You need to also understand the data you're dealing with. But it's in essence always the key things is around process excellence, process knowledge, programming capabilities, and then of course, you know, understanding the particular subject where you're automating. So it's almost as having kind of an application development skills if you really reach that kind of high level. Yeah.
Okay. Another question is asking, where is the RPA Center of Excellence best located in a company? Is the IT department, is it to report directly to the CEO or somewhere else?
Well, I can speak about it from an AI perspective, and I think where we've had some success is having a center of excellence, but not housing every single AI and RPA person in there. I think it's important to sort of share the skills out throughout the organization. So, but we've seen every single model. They've all got ups and downs. I don't know about an RPA perspective, Boris, if you see a best practice.
Well, it's interesting. We see different models. So we see a very successful model like Wärtsilä, a big Finnish company, Razvan knows very well. They were one of our first. They actually had the principle that the RPA developer, the best RPA developer, is the subject matter expert. And so everyone who's creating RPAs is actually the person who done the process, handles the process, the subject matter expert. And it gave them immense agility. But as we come to scale, it just doesn't, you need to kind of put some governance, some service management, some kind of control around it. And that's the other aspect where basically the IT side comes into play. So the answer, what we are observing is it needs to be kind of like a dual model. So you need to enable the freedom of the business users to create the automations and drive this. Maybe they have one champion in their department who's kind of the key point of contact. And you got to have the people who operate the whole, the RPAs become applications, right? They're quite good, and there could be quite a large number. We have maybe thousands of applications. So you need some people who maintain, do the housekeeping of all this, and kind of operating that. So it's that combined mix that probably is the best combination. But you can't do it either or.
Yeah, I mean, I'll expand on that from an AI perspective, and I agree having the domain expert in the team is really important. One of our applications is the way that we apply machine learning and optimization to the way that we schedule our staff. You know, we've got 260,000 staff across the world. The way we match client needs with staff allocation is a massively complex job. They reckon it's got more permutations than there are atoms in the known universe. So you can imagine humans struggle with that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you just give it to the data scientists to solve. I think they're fundamental to the team. But we've had great success in not just driving progress, but mitigating risk by having the domain expert in the room, in that case an HR person. But I've got an ethicist in my team, I've got a lawyer, I've got a compliance expert, I've got a communications person, because you can build the greatest robot in the world, but if people don't engage with it, you lose hearts and minds. People refuse to play ball, and you might as well write it off. So having a multidisciplinary team, I think, can drive progress, but also help you to mitigate some of those risks I was speaking about in my slides.
There are quite a few interesting questions here, so I think some of them we will save for the panels. But I have a question which is asking if there are any use cases that have combined RPA and cognitive services. As an examples, quick.
Yeah, there are multiple ones. So if you think of intelligent OCR, that's one of the first and simplest one, because you extract information from a document, a claim, whatever, invoice. In order to train the machine learning system underneath, you need to do a data validation. So this whole data validation, human-in-the-loop supervision part, it's all managed by an automation RPA workflow. Another example, if you think of processing loans and making a decision or recommendation whether this person is going to default, you have a workflow and you have multiple machine learning components or models underneath. The first one is to classify, is this a loan request or not? Very prediction model. The second one is basically saying, who's this loan about? And the third one will do the final thing of, kind of predicting, is this person going to default or not? All these models need to be kind of, there's a logic around how these models are driven. So that's RPA. The key other thing about RPA is that feeding the data back into the models and making sure that the models are not becoming actually worse, but becoming better and improving, and all that is also RPA. And then to the models itself, the first two models could be actually based purely on, you can do that with NLP. You can easily, identify what it is about and so forth. The last one is a kind of a machine learning model that we really need for, that's where you do a prediction based on the data underneath. So these are real examples that people are applying. The computer vision I mentioned is also AI, right? With your screen identifying objects, it's a real deep learning model that you can apply and then to identify these objects. So this is where the mix plays. But in all of these examples, we never make something totally autonomous.
Okay, I have just quick question one. So somebody's asking if there is a demo or light version of the UIPath to use. I think yes, there is a demo. I don't know if there is a Mac version. Somebody else is asking. So is there a Mac version for
a Mac version?
Yeah.
I use a Mac, but there's no Mac version. So it runs on Windows environment. If you want to automate activities on a Mac, you run it from a Windows environment, and you log into your Mac, and you can automate all these activities in that way. That's typically what you do. We're addressing that because most of all the businesses are using Windows as their desktop operating system. So, and we rarely have customers, only more in the cut and come area, where they're actually using Linux as their key operating system.
Okay, so one last question before we start the next panel. So there is a question, Rob, about applications of AI in the medical industry. I think there should be plenty. So.
Yeah, I was worried about another Brexit question for a minute. So, one of the reasons I'm kind of into this, my late mother was very senior in the health service, and very sadly, she died of a rare disease called motor neurone disease. And I think one of the things I've been really excited by, there's a British startup called Benevolent AI. And they've got a particular technology that allows it to process thousands of clinical trials at the same time and use that machine learning technology to propose new candidates for new drug compounds at a pace significantly quicker than a team of human researchers could do that. And it's already come up with a really promising candidate for a new drug to treat motor neuron disease. So, for example, connecting it to real-world problems, like new drugs, is a really exciting one. Similarly, there's been, in fact, another great British success story, DeepMind, now bought by Google, of just about to commercialize their first product around eye scanning for glaucoma and other illnesses as well, and using computer vision, again, technology, to be able to be trained on millions of scans is now reaching parity and exceeding parity of the best human physicians to identify eye conditions as well. So it's tremendous ones, so clinical and back office.
Also manufacturing. Actually, Boeing does exactly the same thing. So if you think of the 747, how old that plane is, they're using AI in order to, whenever they do any design change, all the test results they ever run, basically they're kept into their AI system. So it can simulate whether this is, how this design will impact, flight behavior and all that. That's quite interesting. Yeah.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. It was absolutely very interesting to hear your presentations here. So, as we are a little bit late, I will go to the next big round of applause. Thank you. So, we will start our next phase of the event today. So, this is the first panel session, and I will invite to join me on stage here Anne-Marie Gestin, CFO with the NG Romania. Please pick a seat, which one? Violeta Luca, General Manager for Microsoft. Kish Reitor, Regional CIO with PwC. And Răzvan Tim, Head of Sales with the UIPath. Welcome. And I will start by asking a few questions, and then again I rely on the public to continue the engagement. I've seen a lot of nice questions. So, Anne-Marie, you represent a client who has started the journey, and I think not only myself, but people in the public are very interested to find out how you decided to start with automation.
Okay. Well, first of all, good morning to all, and thank you for the invitation. Yes, indeed, we have launched a little bit less than 1 year ago our first RPA implementation development. How did it start? In fact, I've been appointed by the NG Group almost 2 years ago to lead a workshop on how to digitalize finance. And I started to read a lot, and suddenly a lot of ideas came, and one of them was RPA. But we didn't want to have it only in finance. We wanted to share it also with the operations, with business, because there we have a lot of volume and a lot of routine tasks. So this is how it started, and as we had no expertise in this domain, we asked for PwC expertise, and in fact, it took us some time to really start this project. We had it in mind, we were exploring the market, how should we do it, and suddenly it was announced that UIPath was the first Romanian unicorn. So we said, well, definitely we have to do something here, and we have to test it. And this is how all started. And then, as I said, as we wanted to share it with business, it took us a bit of time to identify the processes we wanted to start with. We finally found them, and I thank very much PwC colleagues for their patience, because as I said, we looked at various processes before finding the three first candidates. And so there was one bot in finance. Should I go into details already?
You can, of course.
Well, our first, because when I start, I get to start to be enthusiastic about it, so I want to tell you more. And so our first bot is working in finance, is in fact downloading bank statements from our multi-cash application. Then it's reading these bank statements to check whether the payment orders have been processed, and when the payment orders have been processed, it's booking in the accounting translating the amounts from the cash in transit to the bank account. And then when it's not processed, it's informing its human colleague that something was not processed. This is the first bot that we implemented. It's, if I take the pyramid that was shown before, it's a task robot. It's quite an easy one. It's processing 50,000 transactions per month, replacing 3 full-time equivalent with a rate of quality of almost 100%. And this one is a real success, I would say. Then the second one that we implemented is in our distribution affiliate, and is helping issuing the gas access invoices, so taking information from various systems and putting them together into a gas access invoice. This one is processing 2,700 transactions per month, replacing almost 1 full-time equivalent, and with a rate of success of 100%. And this is the one that has the better rate of return. And it's also, again, if I take the pyramid, it's a task robot. And then we had a more complex one, which is a process robot, covering the end-to-end power invoicing process. So it starts in commercial, and it goes to finance, and then it goes to billing. And in fact, behind this process automation, there are 3 bots that have to work together, hand in hand. And when one is not performing, of course, the others cannot perform either. So this one was much more complex to implement, and still is not reaching 100% satisfaction rate. But here the main interest is not really to save time, but to avoid errors along the line, along the process. So voilà, that's how we start, and this is how we did it in the end.
I think it's very interesting, Anne-Marie, and actually you answered one of my next questions, was what went wrong and what went well. So I hear that some robots are very productive, while few others still need some improvement.
Voilà, so what went wrong, I think, well, the key is really in choosing the RPA options, because not all processes qualify for RPA implementation, and I think this is probably the most important thing, is to choose them correctly. And then I think once you've chosen them, you really need to dig really into, you might have well, in finance we have the overview mapping of the process, but when it comes to implementing the solution, you really need to go into the details. And one of the problems, the hurdles that we had also is that when we choose the process that would be automated, people at the beginning, they were not over-enthusiastic about it, because they say, oh, I'm going to lose my job. So, you know, they need to cooperate, because otherwise it's not going to work. They need to tell us everything that is, so as to program the robot. So I think there's a bit of communication also to secure the people and to say that it's not about losing the job, it's about making it more interesting, because then you get rid of the routine tasks and you can focus on what makes sense to you, what is adding value. So this is a second hurdle that we had. And then I think we have a lot of very comprehensive SAP landscape at NG Romania, having almost all the modules implemented. And our IT people were also a bit reluctant, I have to say, on RPA, because they're saying, well, why should we implement RPA? Because we can have everything end-to-end in SAP. Yes, but so it took also some time to onboard the IT persons on this project. And voilà, I think those are the lessons learned, I think.
Excellent. Gentlemen, if you don't mind, I will continue with the lady here. Violeta, welcome. So you are general manager for Microsoft, very big company, well known, lots of great products. I had some questions, but one of the members in the audience is asking, when will Microsoft integrate some RPA elements in Microsoft Office? And I'll start with this question.
So, hello everyone, happy to be here and excited to represent Microsoft, discussing about AI and also about RPA. I must share with you that I joined Microsoft in November 2018, so 5 months ago, quite recently. I'm a fan of technology many years back, actually, and I had the chance to be also on the client side and to actually to choose technologies, to make mistakes, to have wins, and also to see the impact of technology and automation in several career, let's say, moments. And of course, for me and for Microsoft, actually RPA, it's the foundational intuition of digital transformation. So some of you may remember that in 2016 we have launched at a large scale our philosophy of doing business with our partners and customers under the umbrella of digital transformation. Since then the word was overused and could be a little bit demonetized. But here I would like to say that it's like in marketing. The moment you have, let's say, get bored with your advertising, it's only the moment when the customer starts seeing your advertising. So I would say that yes, indeed, may have been overused, but in many, let's say, boardrooms or in many companies, it's still a lot of work to do on digital transformation, and this concept is transforming. And in fact, AI, it's fueling the evolution of this framework. And as you may know, UIPath is for us, for Microsoft, a strategic partner. Our team in Romania started to work with them since many years, since they were a small startup in an apartment. And I remember that my colleagues, they told me actually this story, and I found it very, very good and very well representing Microsoft philosophy. Standing side by side to the companies in their startup days, it's very important, and assisting them and helping them in every way possible. So first of all, we interacting together on the technical side, so our colleagues from developer experience teams worked with them closely, and then of course the company grew, and I was really proud to be one of the happy persons in Romania when UIPath became, let's say, the first unicorn of our market. And in the last year, I would say our partnership accelerated, and we have a huge motion around the world and also in Romania, go-to-market motion to work together. I may say also proudly that UIPath is one of the top partners, independent software vendors partners at global level in terms of co-sell motions we have together. We do many things in partnership, and this is, of course, will have impact in the future. I cannot say, or even if I could, I wouldn't say if it is such a project of integrated things. But what I can say is that our philosophy, being a platform company, a tools company, and a technology company, we want to create an environment to support our customers and our partners to enhance their productivity and their offering in the market.
Okay, excellent. Razvan, we meet again. This time I think we will not continue the conversation about whether robots can be taxed or not. We have interesting opinions about that. Let me ask you, I know you are very passionate and excited about new things coming from UiPath. So can you tell us about something about the computer vision that Boris also presented a little bit?
You want me to respond to that question? You insist. So I've been here for a long time. I was, as they are saying in Romanian, the nut in the wall, right? I wasn't a technical guy. I was surrounded by programmers, and I was fighting for our customers to keep them alive and to kind of fund the business in the beginning. Because the approach, technical guys, oh, he doesn't understand, he's stupid. So let's keep it. I was the only one keeping the clients alive at some point. Computer vision, so I've explored all these stages of growth and technology, and honestly, as Boris told you, it's kind of unexpected for us as well, the growth and everything and the technological evolution. So this capacity of computer vision we have been using since the beginning. So the capacity to understand the application, the interfaces as we do, to know that this is a button, I would click. This is an editable field, I would need to type. So the software UiPath anyways asks you to input the value. The next level of computer vision now is using this powerful algorithm that actually goes us to the next level. You know, in the beginning there was a pain, and the automation was used a lot and intensely, and still is used a lot in the BPO side when you provide services, and you use a lot of Citrix environment. Citrix exposes an image. Now the image, until now, used to be like for some of our competitors coordinate-based. So the software is looking at the coordinates on the screen to identify elements. If you move the screen, the Citrix window to the right, it's done. The robot will not be able to recognize the element anymore. Now the thing is, we have had anyways a strong image automation power in the sense that we used to use labels. So if this is a field associated with the name of the client, I would take out the name of the client, the label itself, and point to the field I would like to type into, or button I would like to click on, right? Now, it's like visualizing everything, each and every element in a picture, right? As we do with the native applications, web or desktop applications. If any of you have tried the UIPath so far, because it's free by the way, 60-day trial, you'd see that when you start your automation and indicate the element you'd like to automate, a button, field, extract text, whatever, you'll see that there is a rectangular interactive shape. And when you do mouse over, the mouse will get the text and the fields exactly. It will enclose it precisely the size of the element. So you know that you need to click, and it will extract the automation on that element, particular element. So now this is the same for images. You click on the image first, you will see that the rectangular interactive shape will not recognize anything in it. It extracts the image, then with the computer, the new computer set of activities that we have in the tool, in a beta now, for now in testing, you can then point, when you just run and want to indicate on that particular picture the elements, you'll see that the elements are highlighted in particular, so are recognized. So starting from the picture of an application, you can now take it from web. We have an example in an event with the RPA developers. You just start automating the application itself, the real application, starting from a picture of it. So that's something extraordinarily powerful because it's so precise and it behaves like in a normal environment with the web and desktop application. So it removes the pain with the lack of accuracy. You know, you change the image, it's done. You cannot find the element. So that's going to be history.
I agree with you, Răzvan, that this is quite powerful and can help a lot when you have specific tasks to automate. Let me ask Kish, you are CIO for us, and is the job of the CIO harder now that we have RPA?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. Hello, everybody. So I kind of represent the IT department, right, on this panel. So, and my job specifically in PwC is to look at the back end of the IT department. So I don't go selling. That's Gabriel's job in selling solutions to business. So in terms of the opportunities that our RPA is providing, and we've got a lot of success stories like you, where we've put in some RPA solutions, and it's literally saved us hundreds of thousands of hours in effort, right? And I think I'll also answer a question that was targeted for you in terms of training. So one of the things that we're doing, because we're also digitizing and transforming as an organization internally in PwC, we want to bring a lot of these capabilities to almost every employee. So in terms of data, for example, we're mandating that every staff is trained in some basic data analytic tools. And within the UIPath, every IT personnel must understand UIPath. at a basic level. And I think the courses that they can run, the core course is free. You just go onto the website and you learn that. So in terms of enabling people to understand the technology and get themselves educated into this thing is pretty important for us. So when I look at the transformation of IT in the back end, and does it make my life easy, we are, as part of our transformation, pushing more and more things out into the cloud, the basic stuff that we used to look after in the past, like the infrastructure is no longer part of our remit anymore, right? It's somebody else's. We outsource, we buy that now internally. So what we're looking at now are looking at operations, how we can digitize those operations, looking at the techniques and tools that we have at our disposal. So people are being trained, and people are then put into these areas where we can provide these capabilities. Now, going back to allowing people, like I think your pyramid was the task-oriented automation. Yes, we give people license to do that perfectly, but when it's shared, when it gets into the shared level, then because we're PwC, we have to be a bit more careful, right, in terms of security, in terms of data sharing, and then there's a whole range of processes that kick in terms of what you can and can't do, right? So we have that sort of already established in that process. The other part, which is I think really important for us, and this is, we talked offline just now about this, is as you let the genie out of the bottle around RPA, people are going to use it. They're going to create more robots, and they're going to integrate and stitch together systems. What you need to do is have some degree of control, right? Because you could literally have hundreds of thousands of robots operating, right? But if you don't have a architectural foresight in terms of how everything is all connected, and down the line, when you want to change a system, and because people are so wedded to their automated robots, they'll be putting up a lot of resistance to not change something that you want to change down the line. So one of the things we want to do is we want to have an architectural role, right, that actually sees the bigger picture and then begins to manage the automation, right, especially when you get into the shared levels and beyond that, right, to see how it brings a much better degree of control.
Okay, so I understand that with proper exposure, IT people and CIOs can be the friends of RPA.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and that if it's done properly, risks are being mitigated.
Indeed.
All right. Anne-Marie, I just want to ask you something. I've noticed that you gave names to the robots. Was this because it was more fun, or that because would reduce some of the fear to the people in the organization?
Well, in fact, both, I think. This is the funny part of the implementation of the bots, because, and it's a kind of reward, because then we welcome the new colleague in the department, and there's a kind of everyone in the area is allowed to propose a name, and then we choose together a name, and we promote it. We welcome the new colleague, and I think this is it was both. It was to get the people on board, and also to reward them because they worked hard on this. Now, I think that there's a bit of frustration nevertheless, because you know that the robot is sitting somewhere on a server, and but you don't really interact with it. It sends you some mail, posts some files in a folder, and so what we've seen lately also is some bots assistant, where you can chat with them, say, well, prepare me this file. We are more on a batch treatment routine task. But I think when we think of more sophisticated things that can be launched from time to time, and then we've seen a demo recently of a bot assistant, and this is really a lot of fun too, I think. So we are currently exploring what needs to come next, because we don't want to stay with our 5 bots. We want to go a little bit further, a step ahead. And here also, I have also a question for the panel and for the audience. We don't really know how we should move on, because initially the idea was to hire 2 young people to take care of the existing bots and help us develop the next ones. but it's very difficult to find resources on the market. I understand that we can train them, but I'm not sure it's the right solution. So for the moment, we have a maintenance contract with PwC, but I think this is really a temporary solution, and I think I would like to open also this question for my colleagues in the panel. And so how should we do to ensure that we keep our robots alive, we maintain them, and we develop it further? So.
That's a general question. In RPA and automation, how should I proceed? The good thing is that you started, and you described a couple of very interesting processes, highly transactional. That's the idea, to start with the best fit processes. RPA doesn't apply to everything, to any process. It applies with some rules. It must be rules-based and so on. And as a parenthesis, I read this article the other day where I got this takeaway that AI is not magic, but it's coming. So it's not like the robot is able to do everything we do, right? In my opinion, so I took some notes here, it's like 10 points. The first thing first. When you start the journey, you need to start with a proof of concept. A proof that we all, when we become, in the situation when we are customers ourselves, we want a proof of that the thing that we're buying, service, product, it doesn't matter, it works for us, it fits our requirements. This is the same with RPA. You need to first, in my opinion, evaluate the potential of automation. That's possible with a partner. A partner, like as you mentioned here, PwC, is able to train, able to identify the processes that are best fitted, where RPA would come as a glove. It would fit in like a glove. And I have two arguments here. Once they are trained, of course, they have the expertise of previous implementation and so on. Secondly, I think in this case, they have the partner has the advantage that knows the processes, your internal processes. If it is an auditor, he knows the processes. He knows where to start with or to suggest a direction. Thirdly, it should be first, let's say, a pilot dimension where you just automate a few processes to make a point. Do you take out the metrics after the automation? You present to the C-level, right? Then propagate all the assumptions, all the evaluation across multiple business functions. As you said, you're now looking at another business function. So it's not only finance or, I don't know, the traditional finance automation. It's not, because it's an agnostic technology. It's, what it matters is the process to be fit in terms of how repetitive it is, how transactional, how manual, and the most important, what are the parameters you are looking at, the metrics. You want to reduce costs, you want to be more efficient, you want to reduce cycle time, you want to increase the satisfaction with the clients in case of a, let's say, support center, and so on. So you need to establish a clear direction from the beginning and the strategy where you should start first. Of course, the partner should not be excluded too fast because, again, you need power to automate. You need people to automate. Would you do that by yourself? I wouldn't recommend. Why? Because I experienced a lot in the beginning because of the openness of the platform. The fact that you have a trial, that you can use it for free to play with it, to have a hands-on experience, enthusiasm that the robots will replace some jobs, some tasks in the company and so on. But it matters who is involved in the overall governance. Because when it comes to bigger scale, you need to have the proper people and the proper governance in place. And for me, the ideal set is with the creation of an internal COE, with the proper people again. It can be from the IT area, because they're supposed to know to have some technical background. But in the long run, when we identify an opportunity of 200 processes in scope for automation across different business functions, you need a partner to just have the peace of mind that these guys are implementing, are developing, are discussing with the employees. It's an effort that if the client would keep it in a center of excellence only, it will be a small scope. And you'll see that you'll have a struggle finding the proper people and the continuity. Not to mention that sometimes I hear that clients are booking these guys for automation just a piece of their daily jobs. It's not working like this. It's a full-time job. And if you're looking at the bigger picture and the bigger benefits, long-term, it's a long-term journey with a long-term return on investment and so on. It's not all of a sudden.
All right, thank you, Răzvan. Long answer, but quite good. So we're getting questions from the audience, but before that, I just want to ask Violeta. Microsoft is well known for many things, but among those, cloud and AI. And can these technologies help propagate RPA?
Yes, definitely. So Microsoft invested in AI in, I think, over 25 years. And in the last 5 years, we did an accelerated progress. And in the last 2, I would say, we've had breakthrough with AI. And for us, definitely AI is foundational for RPA and for automation. And we see this in an integrated manner. So I've mentioned in the beginning that in the beginning we saw the digital transformation framework, and then we said this one should be fueled by AI technology. And now we are seeing more and more RPA integrated in the digital transformation. It's quite, it's part of it. And to build on what Răzvan already said, and to try to build a little bit on Anne-Marie question, I would say that it's very important to look at automation in the long run. We have short-term challenges and we have long-term opportunities and challenges as well. In my own experience, and also I've seen in some implementations, it's really important to have at the board level intent and execution in place. You cannot pursue transformation of the company and innovation with small resources. It's a commitment. I know it's a part of risk as well, and some things may go wrong because I think it's embedded, you know, failure is embedded in progress as well, but it's the only way to really succeed. And I've seen in my previous role, we were 25 countries. At some point, we took a decision to pursue a certain strategic move. 6 countries out of 25 allocated more resources, not only on the digital part, but also, let's say, in sales, in operations, in product management. The ones which really put resources in place were much more ahead of the others and much more successful, even if maybe in the beginning it was an extra investment, and looking only at the figures probably was not really, let's say the business review conversation was a bit more difficult, but the impact is really tremendous when you really know what you want to achieve, you know what are your boundaries, because for sure in any industries there are some limitations we have and we need to take this into consideration. And I fully echo what you said about change management and about inspiring people to embrace technology. I believe it's paramount. If we do not have people behind us and with us to really learn to do things in a different manner, to really be able to take the extra mile effort, because usually in this kind of transformation and big implementations, some things go wrong in the beginning, and it is a lot of hassle. And if they are not fully on board, then the burden is on the, let's say, on the project managers, on the sponsors. So I fully back this. And we've done some implementations in Romania in the early digital transformation projects. And I remember that in one case, the customer accepted to have also a supplier with change management approach as well, so not only the technology partners and so on, but also change management advisory services. And they were much more successful in the beginning because they were managing to overcome certain challenges. So coming back to your question, yes, we are, you know, mobile first, cloud first world. This is our Microsoft view. And we invested tremendously in AI technologies, and I was mentioning the breakthrough. What I can say is that on each of the dimensions, we managed to either have human parity, success all, or to even overcome, let's say, human parity. And this, I think, it's really a breakthrough. And we are not stopping here. It's a journey, and we are putting a lot of focus and effort into this. And we are having an open platform, as you can see. We are developing strategic partnership to harness this, because actually our vision and our CEO vision is to AI to become technology democratized for each company, each developer, and in order to do so, you need the right ecosystem in place to do so.
Okay, thank you. So there are a few questions coming in from the audience, and Kisha, I want to ask you something. So if you would start a new project with RPA, what would be the prerequisites? Somebody's asking, what are the must-haves in such an...
Well, the first thing will be awareness and empowering people, right, to understand the technology, because it's, I mean, if you go into this blind, you know, they wouldn't understand, you know, what, I mean, you know, you did a fantastic sort of show and tell in terms of what the technology is and is capable of doing. So I think that's first, and then the empowerment in terms of getting people to at least be trained in those core capabilities. But equally, and I keep on going back to this architectural thing where, you know, people need to understand how you can apply that, that technology to get the best out of what you're trying to do, right? So if that can also be part of the conversation with whoever's trying to do this project, then I think that's a step in the right direction. And then going back to, you were talking about support, in terms of how you support people once they begin to embrace that in more and more. You know, I'm responsible for 30 countries, right, from Poland all the way to Mongolia. I can't have an RPA expert in every one of them. First of all, I can't find them. And secondly, you know, to train them and bring it to that level would be too big a task. So I do have a small group of subject matter experts that are a center of excellence, right? That's a go-to team when people hit a problem, right? So in the 30 countries, when they are practicing building bots and everything else, they get into the project, they run it, they take it by the subject matter experts, they give them some guidance, and then they're back on doing it themselves. So if I was to start off this, you know, do some core training, get some subject matter experts established and a support program, and you know, and have an architectural direction in terms of how you want to stitch it all together to get the best bang for the buck.
Okay. Violeta, there's a question for you from the audience. So somebody's asking, what is, if you can name a breakthrough AI project that can inspire others?
Yes, there are some. There are some in Romania as well, but I'm not sure if we have PR consent to talk about it just this now. I would mention some, let's say, worldwide case studies available on our, let's say, sites as well. So there are more projects in, so we did more in FSI, in financial services, we did in retail, we did in agriculture, in manufacturing as well. So it's coming to my mind the BMW story with their digital assistant. We worked with them. It's come to my mind Jebel, which is a big company working in manufacturing. We did with them also a big AI project, helping them to minimize the defects in their inspecting process on the product lines. It's come to mind, of course, some of the projects with healthcare industry. We have nice projects both in US, in Europe, in Japan, and China. So either for the customer experience or to the back office. We are working with companies in Romania as well, in healthcare, in retail, in oil and gas. There are, let's say, work in progress projects we started this fiscal year for Microsoft. So we also have, yes, it comes to my mind, the project with AI we have done with AFIR. in the Ministry of Agriculture. They are using AI to predict how they can absorb better, let's say, European funds, and how is the execution done against the commitment. This is one case. And the second case, using AI, it's the, let's say, their agents needs to verify the implementation in the field, and this process was quite heavy in order to document it and to have it right, and the people work to digitize it in full, and of course using vision and speech recognition, they managed to optimize the process itself. So this one is from public sector. We have also with 2 banks some implementations in Romania. Yes, there are many, and there are more to come. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Anne-Marie, I just want to ask you, if you would start again doing this project, what would you do differently? Because there might be things that, I mean, there are people in the audience that are thinking about starting a project. So what would you do different in your case?
Well, I think not so much I think we would not do it too different than what we did, in fact, because we started indeed with a project, with a pilot on three boards, 3 processes. We, being in finance, we have a good overview of the process in the company, being in charge of the internal control, so we know where there are routine tasks, where there are bottlenecks, what can be done. Probably the thing that I would do differently is to communicate better around the project, because to have the buy-in, to explain that what is the technology about to the people, what it means really, what we're aiming at. And I think this came a bit along the process, reassuring people, explaining it. I think this is probably the thing that we would do differently. Now, looking back, I think the fact that we've chosen 2 easy processes to automate and a more complex one is a good thing also, because it shows the difference, you know. It's not the same automating a task and automating a process. It's a big difference in terms of effort and in terms of aligning people. But I think this is good that we've done both, and probably again the communication part is probably the thing that was missing at the beginning, and that is also missing in the end, because now the question is, how do we move on? And we have other candidates for automation. We have a rough assessment of the potential that exists. The funny thing is, the more you communicate, the more you get people coming to you saying, oh, by the way, I have also an idea, you know. So I think
You'd be surprised.
It helps, yeah.
Okay.
Can I add a quick story about NG? Quick funny story. So a couple of years ago, I remember doing a POC on a process. Actually, it was the way the accounting department was structuring the invoices in a long thread of PDF documents, set of invoices. And in the end, you have like a document with 400, 600 pages. So we automated that PDF, extracting different values from the invoice, each invoice, so one by one. And the day when we did the presentation, there were several people in the room at NG office, and someone who didn't know the process, what happened exactly, our developer just saying, yeah, the robot will automate this invoice in 4 minutes. And there was someone in the audience saying, okay, if the robot can do it in 4 minutes, how long does it take for the employee? And someone else next to this guy said, oh, but it has 400 pages. And it was total silence. I mean, he was thinking maybe, okay, it's an invoice, a document, you process it fast, but when it comes to a long thread of documents connected together, and they vary between 400 and 600. And this is a successful POC that we did a couple of years ago. I don't know with which team. I will look into it, and maybe we will look at it again.
It was not in Romania.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Razan. So Kish, there is a question for you. So somebody is asking, so from IT enterprise infrastructure now and architecture, RPA technologies are embedded there. Is it this the next trend?
Is it the next trend? I think RPA is one component, right, amongst many. All right. You know, we're looking at digitizing our business in terms of you know, anything that comes into our back office operation. So you know, RPA in terms of making a lot of your operations efficient, like, you know, Anne-Marie talked about, you know, in HC, in marketing. I mean, I can talk about, you know, when we get contracts from suppliers, you know, we can use some of the RPA capability to review the contract, right, looking for some key words, key sound bites, and then, you know, so SLA versus penalties, service credits, and things like that. So, you know, that makes, and once you change the contract again and again, you want to make sure that connection continues to remain within the contract, within the body of the contract. So those are things where we're applying, right, some of the RPA capabilities. But we're actually going beyond that. If you look at some of the AI capabilities that we're looking at, and I don't know how many people find booking a meeting room, and you know, when you go into the room, you know, then you have to mess around with sort of terminal points to connect your laptop to one of those display panels. And if you're doing a video conference, you want to then enable the video conference, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So one of the things that we're working on right now, we haven't got there yet, but we are slowly getting to the end result, is we want the ability for someone just to walk into the room and the sensors pick it up that it's you know, it's Gabriel that just walked into this meeting room, and they then look at his diary and saying, oh, you've got a presentation to make, can I now display it on the screen, right? And Gabriel will say, yes, I do, and he enters a 4-digit code, and oh, hey, presto, the presentation is already played. Or if there's a video conference that he wants to engage in, it automatically connects as soon as he walks into the meeting room. So that kind of digitization, you know, AI capabilities, we want to integrate with, you know, we use Google, right? With Google and all the other sort of mechanisms that we use in the organization, our meeting room system that we book with. So all of those come to play, right, somewhere using some of the RPA capabilities, some of the AI capabilities, some of the AI already built into the software that we use. So all of them are sort of brought together to help us digitize the business.
Okay. Razvan, there are a few questions here that are asking about examples of RPA, for example, in industrial processing or in automotive or in banking. Maybe you can give a list of the most impacted industries where RPA is currently effective.
Basically, we provide an agnostic tool, a platform for automation where the clients automate and innovate. Because there is a lot of, as Anne-Marie said, a lot of initiative, a lot of new ideas to automate and so on. We are not aware of all the processes in the customer environment, so if the RPA was at the beginning oriented to the BFSI segment only, or mainly, now it doesn't matter. If it's a big company, multinational, you have a lot of work to replace, manual work to replace with automation to improve your operations, efficiency, cost reducing, and so on. So it doesn't matter anymore, but there are some pillars in terms of the business functions, right, that can be more attractive for automation. And one of them is finance, of course. But also we are looking at IT processes, we are looking at HR processes, all those actually tedious processes that can be automated and return value to the business. And it's, as I said, it's very important to make an assumption in terms of what's in it for me after the automation, right? And considering the cost of licenses, consultancy, long run, infrastructure, deployment, because the IT has an important role here, very important. They are thinking and adopting technologies, but they at the same time need to prepare the environment for that, right? In terms of many things, deployment, infrastructure, security, as the three of them. So being agnostic now, it's a matter of identifying the opportunity, right? More or less. And getting back here to Romania, where I think people are looking and hearing a lot of, you know, kind of, let's say, pretty expensive combinations for all of us. I would say that you can start anywhere with automation. You can start with small pieces. We have great clients here, and I want our market to grow. And I am a promoter of this of technology infusion. I know many of you may be reluctant, but it's like the relief we have when I think, oh, there is someone else doing that job for me. Oh, thank you so much. I mean, you're grateful to that guy. And it comes to my mind another example in the householding. I'm not going to keep you too long. And with the bread machine, right? We just put the components and it starts to cook the bread, and you can go and read a book, or I don't know. So it's that kind of thing that we should not do anymore. Things that like the basics to visualize, like copying in an Excel file and into an application, web application, a lot of data, right? And you say that you are occupied with that, I don't know, maybe that's your daily job. But what is in it for you? What brings back to you? Nothing. Just a low-level job that keeps you busy all day. So that's the kind of jobs when it comes to, if you develop more, when it comes to finance, these people must concentrate on numbers, on analytics, on other stuff that brings value to the company and to themselves, rather than copying a lot of data, because this is the job. This is what the job supports. Now it's a robot assistant. You run it, it's done. This is the kind of things, not replacing us, but helping us a lot to bring more value to ourselves and to the places we work with.
Well, that's very helpful. Somebody is nevertheless asking, okay, we start with RPA, we want to do a pilot. What are the best practices to achieve the return on investment in under 1 year? And I can give the PwC perspective, and then I will ask the panel members to contribute as well. So what we tell clients is usually to work on the business case early on very thoroughly. Don't go into RPA automating things that are not fit for. Pick up the best process that has the best value possible as a return, and automate that one, because this will guarantee the proper return you are looking for. It will create a success for you inside the organization. It will help foster the adoption of further work in RPA. So work on the business case first, select properly the process you want to automate, and don't just jump. And I don't know what...
I fully agree with what you just said. Indeed, this is also why it took us some time before really starting to implement, because we evaluated many processes before choosing the 3 first candidates for RPA implementation. And I think the easier the process or the tasks are, the better, the greater the benefit is, because then the bot is quite easy to program, and you have an immediate return. And I think this should be probably the way to start with something easy, which can be successful quite quickly, in order to start really the implementation. So fully agree with what you just said.
What do you think, Ish?
Yeah, I mean, we did something very similar. What we did was to have many interviews with our business in terms of making them, first of all, understand the technology and where we thought was the right areas, by having a discussion with them, where the right areas were for automation. Right, and so when we looked at all of this list, and we had a list of about, I think, 30 potential projects where we thought, we could bring this kind of capability, and it wasn't just finance; it was HC and other areas of the business. So we looked at that, and then we, sort of did a cost exercise in terms of, the savings plus the effort, and out of that we built a subject matter expert group, which is it's about, I think, 6 people. And in addition to that, we also have put in a support program so that anyone who's playing with this technology can come to the Center of Excellence to get the support. So if you then cost that compared to, providing support plus the, like I said, we built a whole range of robots, and I think we're running into about 100,000 hours saved as an example of value. And so, and I think in the long term, we'll see more and more engagement. If at any point we find that the demand drops, then we'll have to sort of relook at the business case. But right now, the demand is on the increase in terms of using that capability.
Okay. I think we are approaching the end of the panel. There is another question that's interesting. Somebody in the IT department says, okay, I want to try this. I want to do a quick win. Where should I start in order to have the success and then gain the confidence of my management in the IT department? I have my answer, but
Well, in the IT department, I mean, one of the things we looked at, and I don't know to what extent you guys review your logs on your servers, right? And we review both for monitoring purposes as well as from a security point of view. And as you know, logs get into terabytes of data that has to be scanned, and you're looking for certain trigger points. Sometimes the systems pick it up themselves, and sometimes they can't. Right? So one of the things that we want to do is look at those logs more comprehensively against some criteria that the system, like not knocking Microsoft or anyone, right? If they don't have that capability, then we put that as a capability into the robots to review the logs. And as I said, the logs are huge files that go into that detail. You talked about the example of 400-page invoice, and they can review a log in a matter of minutes compared to a human being. It will take weeks and weeks and months to find out a trend. So that's one area that you can really look into this thing. The other one, and I think we touched upon that thing, is we have a joiners and leavers, right? So when somebody joins the organization, and if you're working with many different systems, like if you when somebody joins, you got to create an AD account or an email account, and then you got to create a American Express account for them. They're usually going to different systems, but if you have a RPA sitting on top of that joiners and leavers process, and when somebody joins, they get instructions from a HR system saying so-and-so is joined, and then the robot can kick off creating those IDs, right, for you, and immediately, right, the person's onboarded. But more importantly, when somebody leaves, right, you can say somebody's left, and therefore it can then begin to, delete the accounts of that individual. Sometimes what happens is, people forget or they, miss out someone, and the accounts are still live, which is a potential security issue, right? So you can have many areas of the IT department where they can start using some of these RPA capabilities.
Another work can be look at your ticketing system. You can do both RPA and AI at the same time by classifying those incoming requests. Today you have somebody like a dispatcher who's reading the incident. Is if it's able to quickly solve based on known problems, it will do it on the spot. Otherwise, it has to be dispatched to somebody, to a team. This can be done automatically through data classification and natural language processing, or automated in a certain way. So this is another area where you can look into your IT department.
If you allow, sure. I was just recording some of the conversations that we had with your PwC colleagues that are based in Poland that are in charge of the RPA. At the beginning, they said that there's a big potential also in HR. And the example they were giving, I think we didn't start with HR, but I think it's a very good example, is all the change requests that need to be processed by HR for employees. They change address, they have a child, they get married, and so on. And so in big organization, there are 2 or 3 or 4 persons dealing with these kind of requests on a daily basis. And those requests can be taken care of by a robot. And there's an interaction also with the employee. So the example was at the beginning there was a robot, and when the robot was not able to deal with, he was sending the information to a human colleague and was informing the employees that the employee that was requesting this, saying, well, look, I'm not able to deal with your request, I don't understand, because you did not respect the template, I'm going to forward it to my human colleague that is going to interact with you. And this is a very nice way also to promote the technology within a company, because everyone, sooner or later, is in contact with the robot, and it makes it very tangible to people what bots are able to do in an organization. I think it was a very good example.
Thank you. So we are almost at the top of the hour. I will ask each of you to give a closing statement of 30 seconds or so about RPA and what is it in it for us? So, Violeta,
I hope my cough won't come back, apparently out of passion of technology. So, I would say from my side that, and from Microsoft's side as well, that in our view, you know, the world, let's say the world is how we use technology. So, it can have a lot of good and positive impacts, but as well we need to be mindful as well about the negative potential impacts as well. And we developed a kind of 5 steps approach how to avoid these kind of things, and we can elaborate on a separate thread about this. So AI, it's about augmenting human ingenuity and about making the most of the businesses and our, let's say, progress in both business and professional, in both professional and personal lives.
Okay, thank you. Kish?
I think if you're in charge of technology, I think you have to be agnostic about, you know, products and capabilities. I think you need to look at the value that brings into the business in terms of what that technology can do for you. RPA definitely has a place in the armory, right, to deal with all sorts of challenges we have, and it is being used to that effect, and I think it has potential, and especially if it gets into the some of the AI capabilities, then I think if you can stitch that together well in there, then I think it's a pretty powerful force to be reckoned with.
Thank you. Rizwan?
Well, automation has been here for a while. It's not now the beginning. It's just the next stage. So I encourage everyone to try UIPath. It's free of charge. It's not about only about big companies, but any company that would like to try automation, because you adapt and adjust the automation need to your own business dimension. So it doesn't matter the company size. We offer this in an effort to give us the creativity back and the brain back. This is the why in our technology, why we are doing it. And I think it's important again to educate the people into technology. By offering this online platform that we have, the academy and everything, actually it gives you the opportunity, developer or non-developer, to play with a tool, to understand the logic in a tool, right? To create your first piece of automation. Small, but you'll see the pride and the success, the happiness that it suggests. It's like in an exam when you get the high grade in the end. So I think everyone should be educated and focused on this direction. RPA is actually the bridge between, it's the bridge to AI, to a more evolved technology that eventually will help us a lot and kind of mimicking the reasoning in the end. That's it.
Thank you. And Anne-Marie?
Well, I was thinking at what has been said in the first presentation. You're born with technology, so it's a given. You discover the technology between 0 and 30 years. You embrace it, and above 30 years, you start to, you know. So I think indeed it's there. It's important to keep the pace and to continue to get interested in what's happening around and try to adapt and to promote it if possible. Voilà.
Thank you so much. I want to thank personally to my guests here, and please give them a big round of applause. We will now have a coffee break, and of course we invite you to the tech fair. It's for half an hour, and when we return, we will have the second panel, and in the panel we will have Oana Munteanu, Senior Manager from PwC, Ionut Sas, Partner with PwC. We will have Andrea Plesha, who's COO with Druid Software, and Rob McCargo, whom you have seen in the first. So please, now we start coffee break. Okay, welcome back. I think we can start. Some people will join us once they finish the coffee. I hope you found something interesting in the tech fair and you have some ideas. Now we will start the second panel of the day, and here we will be talking about trends in RPA and the impact to various sectors. We will be talking about the workforce of the future, so quite interesting topics, I'd say. And please allow me to invite on the scene Oana Munteanu, Senior Manager with PwC, Andreea Pleșa, Chief Operating Officer with Druid Software, Ionuț Sas, Partner with PwC Tax Partner, and Rob McCargo, whom you know. We will be using the same concept, so please ask your questions. I will check them on the app, and then we can start the discussion. But while you warm up, let me start with the ladies and ask a few questions. So, Oana, you deal a lot with HR. So, why is HR a field where RPA is fit?
Well, actually, we've been discussing about HR transformation, like, at least for me, it started about 10 years ago, and it was always about, how we can split value-added from non-value-added activities, how can we bring efficiency in the HR department so that the HR staff is not burdened anymore with administrative tasks. And there is no better moment than now to actually get rid of these non-value-added tasks and focus on what's really relevant. And the good news for HR, as compared to probably other functions in the organization, is that there is so much else to do besides the automatable parts that HR staff shouldn't be worried that they would not have a job. In terms of automation, I guess in every HR process, we can think about what can be done with the help of technology. And here there are two things that usually create a burden, non-value-added burden in HR. One is related to, the pure processing part of contracts, payroll, benefits, and the other is the employee communication. Employee communication in those, very predictable Q&A types of questions. And here I will not enter too much in this area, which is related to chatbots, because Andreea is the specialist and she has a solution to present in this respect. But basically, just imagine, if we are talking about the employee life cycle, just, the onboarding and recruitment process. Basically, I think, okay, it depends a lot on the job and industry, but from 50 to 90% of the process can be currently automated, from the screening of jobs, contacting candidates online, asking a few basic questions, sending them the offer, receiving the offer back, putting all the information from the offer and from the documents in the employment contract. Even the signing part, it depends on the legislation, but even the signing part theoretically could be automated, and then all the onboarding procedure related, to health and safety training, all the documents that you need to sign, including having like a, short performance review after 1 month, having like an onboarding survey after a few weeks, just for the employer to understand, how was your onboarding experience, whether you are at risk of leaving, and things like this. And the examples are numerous. I mean, we can speak all day, but with the exception, or maybe learning and development and performance management would be the processes which are, less, there is automation and solutions there as well, but there is a lot of human involvement, which is actually much more important than the automated part.
I think you're right, and in fact, there is a lot of interest from the HR world to understand how RPA can be deployed, and I hope such discussions help clarify the directions and the strategies to adopt. Let me ask you, Andreea, you are working for a young startup. I like a lot your company, Druid Software. So the automation you promote to clients comes from a different angle, a chatbot.
Yeah.
How does this help?
So first of all, I would like to clarify the term of chatbots. Basically, chatbots are software programs that have a certain level of artificial intelligence in place and can mimic the way you interact with a human being. Chatbots that we developed, at first we don't develop chatbots. We have developed a platform that help you configure chatbots without having to write any code. Chatbots are actually virtual assistants that interact on your behalf with the enterprise system and help you chat with the system instead of having to go through each and every system and do clicks and access different screens, and you have to do an induction for that. Nowadays, people are more and more familiar with the chat interaction, even from human to human. We don't prefer talking to the phone anymore, but chatting with each other. So this approach is the new thing of automation in terms of processes within the organization. Grid platform is not only a platform, it also comes with some already predefined virtual assistants that can assist in various processes for different industries and to basically cover all the roles that interact with the enterprise environment. As Juana mentioned before, we have implemented an automation, a virtual assistant for HR department that helps with non-creative tasks and administrative tasks, and also can connect to different data sources and provide information to employees. We have developed chatbots for financial services, both dedicated to internal use to salespersons and also to external use for customers, self-service. They can, customers can interact with the systems by chatting and can get information about their contracts, their payments, their invoices. They can do payments via chat. We have also chatbots that are natively integrated with RPA processes and can trigger UIPath process and can start basically by chat any automation within the organization.
Quite interesting. Now I go to Ionuț. Ionuț, you are a big supporter of technologies, new ones, and especially RPA. So in terms of being a consultant, a tax consultant, how is this impacted by RPA?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, first of all, and nobody is perfect, so I'm a tax guy, not a technical one in terms of technology, but I would say that the tax function will be transformed quite dramatically in the next years. This is due to the fact that the volume of data that is processed, the necessity for having a greater transparency in the relationship between taxpayers and tax authorities, as well as the necessity to ensure that data that is manipulated will be further secured, will definitely transform the way that the tax function is working. And RPA can be, let's say, one starting point. Is not the only solutions or the only technology that will impact the tax function. I'm thinking here to the, let's say, to the data visualization and data mining applications. I'm thinking that RPA will be, a very natural step towards going to the artificial intelligence for various bits and pieces of the tax function. And last but not the least, it would be blockchain might have an impact on creating various workstreams within the tax area that will shape the future on how the organizations will work. It is indeed a question on how the change management will be performed within a tax and, let's say, going a bit broader in a finance function. But at a certain moment in time, due to the fact that, let's say, data is already somewhere within the organization, and hypothetically speaking, in the near future will be everything in a cloud, in that moment in time, the profile of the people will change towards a data analyst and a business analyst of the data, rather than, discussing on the technical merits of a certain transaction from a tax perspective. This does not mean at all that people will be replaced in full by the, let's say, by the robots or by the artificial intelligence or by various, dashboards that will be present into the screen. There will be something that the robot, at least at this moment in time, to the best of my knowledge, is not taking the emotion, that is not taking the feeling, is not taking the empathy of, let's say, of a consultant. And the trust element that the people is bringing towards the equation whenever we are discussing about, a complex tax transaction, that there will be certain number of years up to the moment when this will be triggered. However, RPA and artificial intelligence can bring all the necessary, let's say, tools and aids to make the job either of the CEO of vice president or a tax director and of the tax consultant much more streamlined and efficient.
Okay. Rob, your specialty is AI and connects a lot to chatbots and to robots. So do you think that we would be able in the future to do self-service like banking fully automated based either on a combination of chatbots with AI behind or only AI? Is this the future we are going?
I think I'm always very careful about forecasting the future. I mean, there's a brilliant profession of people who are futurists and they can sort of say anything and not be held to account by it. Whereas I always think it's a bit, you know, you don't know what's going to happen beyond the end of the week at the moment. There's so many amazing breakthroughs that happen with technology so frequently. I mean, I think it's going to provide significant utility. I think the idea here is, I think Boris was saying, it's removing the drudgery, removing friction, making our lives as workforce and citizens more streamlined as well. So I just can't imagine exactly which use cases will flourish. And I think this comes back to this approach about the innovation methodology that companies now have. And I'm just thinking about our own experience. I think when we first started making a meaningful move into AI as an organization a few years ago, we kind of went down the traditional route of scoping out a big project, finding a vendor, allocating all the workforce and the resources and measuring it and putting a whole set of success factors into place, and it failed spectacularly. And I think in the space of a few years, AI in particular as a technology has become democratized. It no longer requires a multi-million euro budget to get started with. The technology is virtually free. But I think back to the earlier panels, we need to think about the raw ingredients for success. So first of all, data, talent, picking the right project, but also giving your team the courage and the freedom and the permission to make mistakes. And I think in heavily regulated organizations like ours and many of the ones in the room, sometimes encouraging your people to make mistakes isn't always an easy thing to do. So we've kind of gone from having one massive moonshot to running 50 proofs of concept at the same time, and we'll fast fail them constantly and double down and scale the ones that look more promising. And I think that ability to be more experimental is starting to bear fruit for us so far. Which ones then lead to production-ready applications, it's hard to say yet what's going to be the big bet.
Yeah, what you say resonates a lot. I met recently head of innovation of a bank here in Romania, and this gentleman has an amazing job. Is that of experimenting with new technologies, and every 3 months he's starting fresh. Either he's reporting to the CEO, okay, we found something, there might be an application, or clean slate starts again. Very interesting. Okay, I have to ask you again to think of your questions and post it so that we can have a dialogue here, not only myself asking questions to the people. But let me continue while you post your questions. So one, if I am an HR director nowadays and RPA is coming, I participate in such an event, and should I be afraid? I mean, is my organization going to be fully disturbed about new technologies coming in, and how would I manage the fear of the people?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends what world do you belong to as an HR director. For those of you who took the quiz, probably in a very corporate world, you should be delighted actually, because cost effectiveness will be, you know, at the top of the worries. But actually there are, I think, 3 major implications when we are talking about, you know, what HR should be doing just to prepare for the technological disruption, so to speak, especially in a world where not just technology is affecting us, but I think demography is an aspect which is as important in terms of, you know, the length of working life and everything else. So these 2 aspects, I think, are changing the way HR is looking at people. And one of the aspects is obviously the skill set. And then obviously what you are thinking of is, okay, what are the other things that we need when we do the implementation of different technologies? And the problem is that technology is developing fast, but skills of people are not developing as fast as technology. So in terms of actually changing the behaviors, the tasks, the way that people relate to jobs changes at a much slower pace than the RPA actually, or the robots who are implemented. And this is why actually all the promises, you know, the 2030, which is the milestone for all the predictions in terms of job of the future, that, I don't know, 30, 50%, whatever of the jobs will be fully automated, I think will probably not live to its promise, just because organizations and people will not be able to cope and internalize all these changes. So how to adapt in terms of both digital skills, yeah, because digital skills is important. How do you use the new technologies? Do you understand what they mean and what is the impact on their job? And the actual, you know, more developed, more sophisticated jobs which are created together with the technology, which are about innovation, adaptability, user experience, and all the other things which are extremely important because, you know, in all the processes, we have to integrate robots in the same way as we integrated colleagues or departments before. And this is not as easy as it looks. It's just like we are replacing a robot with a person with a robot, and that's fine. It's not as easy as this because you have to think about a lot of implication. Secondly, it's, you know, the ethical dilemma, and I was very delighted because during the break, Rob shared that in their new technologies team in UK, they have an ethicist. Okay, maybe you can share more about this with everybody else. It's, what do you do? I mean, you're a corporation, you know that 30% of your people are disposable, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years because of the new technologies. You are in logistics, everybody, instead of people, you'll have drones and self-driving machines. Do you still invest in this 30% of your people? Or you are just expecting them to be laid off and whatever will happen to them is not your problem? Okay, there are two approaches to this, of course. So the very, you know, efficiency-oriented one, where, yeah, cost-wise, it's a benefit for the company. But what will happen with the whole society if in every company 30% of the people will be disposed? No new skills will be brought. I mean, they will not be exposed to developing new skills, and they will be just a social problem for all of us. So this is a big question, I think, not only for HR, but for everybody doing business. And the third one, which is also very important, is the focus on, you know, creating valuable people experience inside the organization. Also because, you know, the war for talent will become even more difficult than now. So basically, attraction and retention are critical, but also just because, you know, generally the lifestyle is changing, generations are changing, expectations in terms of what work is changing. Therefore, and I think we already see a lot of you know, worries or ideas around what to do with flexible working, with flexible workforce, with the gig economy, how we can accommodate during a very long work life, yeah, which can maybe last forever. Maybe pensions will not even exist 30 years from now. It is a scenario which some people are thinking about. So then we have to manage work in such a way that people can also think about their well-being. And well-being is not just, you know, having fruits in the office, but it's about actual time off and managing workload in a reasonable way. It's also about creating experience in terms of, you know, innovating, using entrepreneurship as a people experience inside the corporations. And again, creating that environment that encourages people to try and even fail, which is quite difficult, and generally preparing them for a life where adaptability is key. Most people, maybe generations that are coming out of school now, will probably have 4 to 5 not jobs, but different professions along their life. So it's not just I'm an accountant and I will have, okay, different positions in my career, but generally I will work in finance. It's very likely that we will switch completely domains in which you work. For our children, definitely this will be the future. So I think these are the 3 key things that are worrying, you know, the HR people at the moment. Again, it depends. They can be worried on one or another, depending on their profile, but generally this is the picture.
Okay, and in practical terms, Andrea, you work with many type of clients, retail, banks, quite diverse industries. So what is the behavior and what is the resistance of people, ordinary people, to use a chatbot because the HR department suddenly decided that we have a chatbot and my pay slip will be presented by the chatbot?
People are quite eager. It's something new and they want to try it. So when they are first noticed that, hey, you have a new colleague, everyone starts chatting with that new colleague. So the adoption of a chatbot is quite high, both for internal users and also for external users. Some people, and this is the funny part, if you give the chatbot a human image, or you present it as your colleague, some people even started to make declarations and invite her out. For instance, the virtual assistant in an HR department for one of our customers. So, of course, they were joking with the chatbot, but we have trained the chatbot to also answer to this type of invitations.
What does it say?
It depends on the person.
It recognizes faces as well.
And they can have a coffee in a virtual space, of course. So the adoption is quite high, and my colleague was talking about the new workforce generation and how people are being afraid of being laid off, and they are quite resistant in adopting this new technology. I think that robots have to be trained. So people can be converted to execute more creative jobs rather than the repetitive ones that in time they can make mistakes doing the same thing all over again. While with the robots, for repetitive tasks, there is no risk of doing mistakes. And people can focus more on creative tasks. They can be reconverted and start training the chatbots. Our platform, for instance, is, so when we designed the platform, we thought of user experience a lot. So basically anyone can train its own robot. We have a very, very user-friendly interface. So even people that are not literate in the IT field can create the conversation flows, small conversation flows, and the robot can answer to it. Even the colleagues from HR department can teach the virtual assistant how to respond to different questions regarding the company policy, for instance, and other type of static information questions. So those that are generally available for all employees and do not require connecting to, let's say, other systems.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So finally we have one question, but I will just defer it for one more minute. Just want to ask Ionut, so we as consultants, are we doing enough to promote the adoption of these new technologies both for ourselves and as well for our clients, or we are behind the curve?
Before that, because there were, several topics which are quite interesting and with a magnitude, I wouldn't say that, the transformation of the workforce is just a matter of the HR department. I guess it's a matter of the entire society, and conversations at international level, I'm pretty familiar. I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with the conversation on the digital taxation that are incurred at OECD level, that were incurred at the level of European, which for the time being are tackling only, let's say, the various companies which are doing various digital activities. But there is one fundamental question that is put on the table, whether we'll need to tax the robots or not. And I guess that this question has been brought to the media as a whole by Bill Gates. I will be a bit, ironic now that it's easy to bring this to the table when you're a billionaire rather than when you are a startup. But nevertheless, it is an important question, and it's a matter even, and from my perspective, it will be a very philosophical question that will need to be replied with a global consensus. And this global consensus will not be on a yes or no, whether we tax it or not, but rather we decide on a path, what would be the algorithm and what would be the allocation of the value that will be created from the taxation of the robots. And to make it very, very simple, assuming that an algorithm is created in Romania, is it Romania the only territory in the world that is able to tax that robot? Or basically Romania will need to allocate part of the revenues from taxing the robots towards other territories around the world, because people will be laid off even in other parts of the world. And I'm putting the other way the question, because if we are looking to the pools of, where the intellectual property sits, is basically we are just counting on, one hand, and I'm speaking about the actual real intellectual property, and I'm speaking about territories, not about cities. So this is something that we as a society will definitely need to be part of the conversation, and we'll need to bring all the ideas to the table, because at a certain moment in time, indeed, the pension fund, my feeling is not if it will be in the future, but whether when it will need to be dramatically and fundamentally changed in terms of how it operates, whether it will be in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. It's a matter of the demographics, and basically this is a conversation that the entire society will need to have it. And yes, taxation will be part of it, because I mean, the famous wording that there are two things in life that we are not escaping. One is death, and the other one is taxes. I would say that if I'm looking to Noah Harari, that can be postponed if we are going a bit to the Homo sapiens and Homo Deus. So basically we'll remain only with one, with taxation. So at a certain moment in time, for the rich guys and ladies. But that's why I would say that, and again, is coming back to your question, Gabi, is not a matter of whether we are prepared or not, or whether we are behind or below the curve. It's a matter on when we will be decided, and we will be, fundamentally able as human beings to rely entirely into a machine, if I can call it like this, and to give up on a certain, elements of control towards the machine. I would say that if we are looking around the world, to the best of my knowledge, and again, I'm not the expert here, but there are various territories which are very, very advanced, which are coming also from the culture. If we are looking to Japan and we are looking to the other Asian territories, they are much more, even culturally speaking, and also obliged by the demographics to rely more heavily into a robot. I mean, if we are looking to a Japanese family, which is quite old, a robot is already in place in their house as being, the servant for the elderly people there. It's a hardware. If we are speaking to the US market is looking a bit to let's say, to increase the efficiencies, and basically going a bit to the cost element in, making the necessary arbitrage on the profitability versus the value creation towards the society. Whereas Europe, and speaking now about Romania, we are a bit behind, because although we are creating, and although we are very talented in creating the algorithm and creating the solutions, we are still a bit in the change mindset, a bit behind versus the others. And we need to look, we need to be very, very honest. If we are looking to our, penetration of internet into the rural society, we are looking how many laptops or, desktops are into the rural society. It is a bit strange to ask whether we are ready as a nation to go. Speaking a bit even more macroeconomically, if we are speaking on how our apparatus is working in terms of digitalization, we are by no means where we were supposed to be, and we are unfortunately having the higher speed on internet, but we are not able to submit, a certain tax return online, because we need to file it at the second floor of a certain building, which is online. But anyway, nevertheless, what businesses are doing, I get that the businesses are looking quite heavily in the way on how they can optimize, and how they can streamline the technology. But here, there is still the break. It's a, how can I say, it's a break-even point, because for the time being, Romania is still not necessarily a low-cost territory in terms of, salary cost, but it's going from a low cost to, let's say, to an emerging territory. And pretty much we're experiencing what India has experienced few years ago. Still, India has a much larger population that we're having. And basically, I would say that Romania will nevertheless be obliged to go to this route, speaking only about Romania, because the demographics, unfortunately, are not showing, a good trend. I mean, we are having, a negative natality rate, we are having a negative mobility rate, and basically, if we are looking immediately after Ceausescu's fall, for communist fall, we were around 23.5 million, as far as I'm recalling, on the last census. If we are calling now the last census, we were 18.5, which in a period of only 20 years, it's a dramatic decline of the population. So basically, for Romania, automation and having the robots and having artificial intelligence is not a question of whether we need to do it. We must do it because otherwise, potentially, and I don't want to be very pessimistic, as a nation, we might fall into into a matter where consumption will no longer be an appetite for the big players to come to Romania.
Yeah, I think you're right about the impact of the demographics. But if I switch a little bit from territories to organizations, Rob, do you think that an organization is currently Romanian or Western European? I don't think it really matters. Are they ready to manage a robot workforce?
Robot warfare.
No, workforce.
Oh, workforce. Robot warfare is a whole other topic. They put bombs in robots. In part, I think, possibly. I mean, there's so many considerations that the panel's already raised here. I think some will do it better than others. I'm conscious of the language we use here a little bit. We talk about digital workforce. We talk about, these things as though they're intelligent. There's already discussions underway about whether robots need rights. The EU are talking about that at the moment. Will therefore you need to entirely change your HR department to take into account how do you manage that digital part of your workforce? I think we've got some pretty profound issues to overcome, haven't we, as we start to see this stuff scale. So at the moment, I don't think our existing structures are fit for purpose to enable the growth of this at scale. I think there's more questions than answers at the moment. It's going to be a bit of an experimental ride for the time being.
Okay, however, we do encounter from time to time, let's say, more mature clients which have scale in terms of size, and they have experienced that implementation of RPA technology brought them a capacity, digital workforce that they can employ when there are overloads of activities, and they just trigger that.
Yeah.
Take off the...
But I think it's then, depending on what you then do with that spare capacity, a lot of the way that, for example, RPA is sold is implement this, it will replace 12 full-time equivalent employees, which, if you're a member of the workforce, I think you might feel pretty uncomfortable about that. So I think this is why it's so important that technology strategy goes hand in hand with workforce strategy at the same time to take that into account. And how do you make those 12 people who are displaced retrained into even more interesting jobs is critical. And we've had our own experiences of building really cutting-edge technology platforms, and they didn't work for many reasons. One of them was the staff didn't trust the technology, or when they first started testing it, they were saying, well, it's not as good as me. But you have to recruit them to make it as good as them. And when it's better than them, they might then feel threatened. So you've got to win hearts and minds over and have a really comprehensive people strategy at the same time, which is great to see technology and people cross-cutting with purpose at the moment.
Okay, I think this links to another question. And so, should organization plan, let's say, at the beginning when deploying RPA and knowing that 12 people, for example, or 30%, as Juana was mentioning, could be out of job, should we plan to train them ahead so that they do other stuff, like you say, more creative work, or go and replenish the workforce in other departments? What do you think? Well,
but I think there are two perspectives. One is the actual future of the company and the way you actually can use this workforce in the future, so you retrain for yourself. And the other one is, the social responsibility aspect, where you retrain people so that they are, employable on the market generally. And it's something that actually some companies are thinking about. It's really just a social responsibility matter, yeah, because again, what will happen to every one of us if all this workforce suddenly becomes unemployable, basically because they don't have any kind of skills which are relevant at the moment. And this is the philosophical discussion that you just mentioned, Harari, recently. it's something that we really need to think about. And to be honest, I don't think generally governments around the world have the capacity to do this by themselves. So the business community should be there, or at least on their side, if not alone, like in some cases.
Okay, so if I'm an employee and I see that my company has deployed a lot of robots and the processes work perfect, so I think we have experienced that some people fear to raise their hand, say, okay, I have a process that can be automated because for fear of losing their job. So do you see, or any of you see that there are tools to do that automatically? I mean, to discover processes. I think maybe AI can help here spot trends in processes. What do you think?
Just tell a quick story while they're thinking about that. There was this great story, came out last year, I think. There was a technology worker who had a certain responsibility for a process, and they managed to find a way of automating the process, which meant that the 40 hours per week they were employed to deliver, they were able to do it in 2 hours, and then they spent the rest of the week on the beach or whatever it was. and then it raised a big ethical debate, in the community around, is that appropriate? Is it legal? Is it a breach of your employment? He was still delivering the work to a very high standard for the contracted price, but he just found a way of doing it. So it's going to raise a number of topics like that. How do you stimulate innovation from your workforce to do that at the same time? There are, I think, back to your point, a number of sort of crowdsourcing tools available I've seen that work quite well. But you're not going to draw the best use cases out unless there's something in it for the workforce that could feel either threatened or disenfranchised by it. So they've got to be able to be drawn into ownership of that. And I think maybe having central innovation hubs where members of the workforce that came up with the idea can be brought in for a cycle of experience to kind of half own the project might be one way of incentivizing them.
And generally, thinking about creating a vision about the future of this workforce and their career perspectives, in a proactive manner, preferably, not once the robot is there.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen you, Andrea, nodding in approval, so what's your opinion?
So we are working also on a tool to self-train the chatbot. Basically, we take all the questions that were asked by the customers or by the users that interact with the chatbot and cluster them in some way, and then we can inform a trainer. So again, the human person also has to come in place. We inform it, look, this is a cluster of possible questions. Would you like to create a flow that can provide answers to all these questions that kind of resemble in a certain way? Furthermore, I have seen the demos of tools that basically record the actions that you are performing, the repetitive actions that you are performing within the systems, and then they can extract this data, export it into a BPM tool, and then give you a graphical view of the processes and help you create further automation processes within, let's say, UiPath Studio. So there are tools, and I think a lot of companies will invest in extending these self-training robots.
Mm-hmm. Can a tax consultant benefit from this?
Not necessarily a tax consultant, but I mean, if we are looking a bit to the history, and if we are looking to the wealth of nations written up few decades, let's say, there is always a limiting factor, whether it's labor, whether it's capital, whether it's the resource. And here, basically, I will put a resource which is extremely important and basically which relates to two resources, basically. One is time and the second one is data. At a certain moment in time, the volume of data and the lack of time will allow the people in the organization to be allowed to be forced to innovate, because otherwise there will be a limiting factor. It's not that the fact that the employer will not have a budget to recruit another 10 people. It's just a matter that they will not find the right people at the right moment at the right place. And in that moment in time, you will be a bit forced to create and to innovate and to make your life a bit easier together with your team. And therefore, my view is that people will retrain, and there should be a support, of course. I mean, for various categories within the society, there should be definitely a support from the corporations, and basically, but on let's say average and above educated population, basically the retraining and the recharacterization on the profile will be done, not necessarily automatically, but the people will be there and they will be ahead of the curve. But yes, there will be a certain category of the people that will need a bit to be retrained and to be, let's say, integrated into the society. On this one, I'm a bit optimistic, because my view is that the automation and the robots and artificial intelligence will create other jobs, and basically will create various other niches, and unfortunately here governments will not be ready. They cannot be. Definitely they are not making the innovation. So basically they will need to adapt towards the corporations. The corporations will need to somehow lay the foundation of the recharacterization of the workforce. But can you imagine, I mean, cybersecurity will bring heavily people into the market, whether it's white, whether it's black. I'm not in terms of hacking activities, but it will be something that, a few years ago, we were not speaking about cybersecurity as being, if we were speaking about business analysts or data mining analysts, I mean, honestly now, and here, Rob, maybe you can complement me on this one, to be complementary. We are hiring, data scientists within PwC. Have we done this, 5 years ago or 20 years ago? Most likely not. I mean, and therefore, I mean, the population, the workforce will not necessarily naturally, but we will be a bit, we will go a bit with the technology developments. Whether tax consultants will resist, yes, I would say yes. The good ones, yes, definitely. And, because, again, the emotions are there, and basically, a certain decision will be taken also on the emotions that you are feeling, that this is the right thing to do. This is something that I can sleep at night. This is something that, the value that I'm creating by implementing, a certain strategy will be there. Yes, for part of our work, it will be changed, because we will work with systems and we will work with data. What will be critical for a tax consultant is that the input data into the system, whatever is the system, is, as much as accurate as possible, and then the output will be just analyzed. I mean, my vision, I really hope that I'll be alive at that moment in time, is that basically a tax consultant will stay in the front of a screen, and basically they will just see the processes, just running, and basically green means that everything runs smoothly, red means that you need to intervene like a fire brigade. And yes, you'll have time to chat and to discuss about, the real thing in life. I mean, should I open up a factory in Brasov, or shall I, do a new reorganization in, I don't know, Venezuela?
All right, we have a client who's asking this. Shall I
Venezuela, yes?
No, Algeria and or other.
I'm pretty sure about Venezuela. No offense to anybody. So.
We talked about the workforce of the future, where we touched base, and in your presentation earlier, Rob, you mentioned some of the skills. I think this is highly interesting for everybody. So what should people be looking after in terms of either you are young and you start a new career and you have to have those skills, or you want to retrain yourself into a certain direction so that you are safer?
Yeah, I've got quite a few thoughts on this. And just building on the last point about the way that jobs change. I think also about the audit. Clearly we employ a lot of auditors. It's our traditional line of service that is changing massively as years go by, far more data and technology driven now. And you think about the forensic audit, for example. Now, the people there that would be scrutinizing accounts manually, I think we're already starting to build teams that become like AI auditors. So humans whose job it is to inspect technology processes and systems to build confidence and trust in the technology. So you can start seeing a whole host of new requirements of people that the skills that our auditors have, skepticism, objectivity, data analysis, they then become really useful to retrain themselves to become technology auditors, not just financial auditors. So you can see that the way that jobs are delivered changes, but the overall purpose stays the same. So you can start imagining how jobs change. When you start imagining the new types of jobs that don't exist yet, the one I always laugh about is, do you know the word sarcasm in Romanian? Yeah?
Yes, it's the same.
So AI really struggles with sarcasm. especially British sarcasm. So we're going to need a whole workforce of sarcasm trainers in the future. So there's hope for my children yet. I don't know, when people ask me about what should kids become, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, for me, one school of thought goes down this, train them to become programmers and data scientists and engineers. Then you see the World Economic Forum slide there, and that's talking about emotional intelligence and human characteristics and creativity and becoming poets and philosophers and God knows what. I don't think there's any way you can accurately forecast this, because we don't exactly know what the jobs are going to look like. I think one thing that you can say, though, is that the people that are going to follow the course and learn about things they love, things that motivate them, get them out of bed in the morning, want to continually learn and perfect themselves, are the ones I think that will cope better, because it's not, as I said before, about what you're learning to become, it's how you learn, and it's how quickly you can relearn that are the key skills required. So I sort of pull back from saying everyone should go and do programming or philosophy. I think it might be a combination of the two in the future.
Philosophical programming. Okay.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay, I have a next question. I think we should have brought on the panel a lawyer, but maybe one I can answer. So how do we mitigate bad reputation for a company, let's say, doing automation and restructuring?
Well, I don't think it's a legal question, basically. It's, yeah, I really think it's something that you should be worrying about, yeah, because especially in the new generations, millennials and the ones coming after them, are really looking at socially responsible companies. I mean, besides the fact that you have to live in a society and you have to think about the consequences of what you do, especially if you are a large employer, you also have to think that your future employees, potential future employees, and especially talents, are looking at your behavior on the market from this perspective. So I really think it's something that should be considered, and I think most companies are taking into account, large companies at least, are taking into account such aspects. It's not mandatory from a legal perspective at this stage. Who knows what will happen in the future, because if this becomes a large phenomenon, it is possible that the regulators will also think about, you know, putting some constraints. Look what happened with the GDPR. Yeah, it took them a long time to understand what technology can do to personal data, but once they realized it, they basically you know, they affected the way we actually do business in a very drastic manner. It might happen the same in terms of employment, but we are not there yet. At this moment, there is absolutely no constraint from the regulatory perspective in terms of doing. I mean, once you prove that the job is not needed anymore because you have the technology to do it, you're fine, basically.
Okay. There is a more generic question, so any of you can answer. And the question is, in order to implement, to start with RPA, is it a prerequisite to have lean processes and your organization to be guided by lean?
I don't think it's a prerequisite, but it's better if you want to actually achieve all get all the benefits from such a project. I think even you know, putting and this is I see this a lot happening. You know, people are excited about RPA and various technologies, and some organizations become overwhelmed with so many solutions which are not integrated at all and which are basically just put on top of whatever exists. And then, in the end, if you actually look closer, it might be even more ineffective than it was before. So, yeah, I think the natural way should be like this. It's not happening in practice, unfortunately.
And if I were to say two jokes, and I'm just putting the prerequisite that there are two jokes, basically. One is in real life, when I've done an implementation and, you know, something was not working, and I remember that, you know, the lead director of the implementation was saying that the problem is between the chair and the laptop. So that is not a process. This is the first one. And the second one, I mean, because I'm an accountant, there is a principle which is not written up into the books. It's called GIGO. It's like FIFO, LIFO, but it's also GIGO. So garbage in, garbage out. So if the process is wrong, the output will be wrong, mainly for a robot. So once again, two prerequisites that there were jokes. So.
I think we can see the answer there.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so I'm running out of questions. Let me appeal back to the public to ask, to benefit from the participation of the guests here on the panel, and ask questions.
Can we ask you as well?
Of course. Yeah.
How do you feel the world in the world of technology and robotization?
It's like a job interview now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Luckily, I'm in now, so it's too late. Well, I feel good. Yeah. So what can I say? I like the fact that interacting a lot with clients or prospective clients from this perspective. I can see that there is a future for RPA, and I'm talking now about the Romanian market. It's not about to say, okay, well, I have heard of a client in the US who has 50,000 robots deployed. Yeah, we are not there. We don't have organizations at this level of capacity. However, the level of interest has dramatically increased, and there is a lot more that the clients are asking from us, how should we start? So we had some clients here also in the public that were asking, okay, where do we start? And we always tell them, okay, make an analysis. And this is similar to create your business case. We have current discussions with clients whereby defining the business case is the most important selling point. I think it speaks for itself. Being able to commit to a return on investment of a certain magnitude and in a certain time period, it's essential for you as a client to make a decision. So therefore, I feel okay having these interactions. I know that we will have lots of this coming more. So, okay. I think I have no more questions, and we are like 5 minutes or so before ending the panel. I would want to ask each of you to make a final statement about the topic of this panel and RPA in the context of the impact that it will have to various economic sectors and the workforce of the future. So let me start with you.
Yes, so thanks, Gabriel. We've covered so much ground today, haven't we? And I think the exciting thing I see about these types of technologies, unlike technology in the past, is it really cross-cuts all parts of your business. You know, so for example, my clients cut across finance, marketing, HR, compliance, in-house counsel, operations beyond. So it's a really exciting opportunity for everyone to participate in this. And that in itself is the reason why it's more likely to thrive than cause damage. I think the more voices helping to drive this, that can only lead to good outcomes. And as I said in my original talk, there are very real implications and downsides if we don't get this right. But the other opportunity side is, we have to start on this path because there is a risk that other countries will race ahead. And if we don't at least start experimenting and pushing the envelope on this, then we might fall behind. So, and with that, we miss out on so much opportunity to solve really hard problems and make business better and make society better at large. So sort of in summary, I'm kind of like an optimist, but I'm kind of like a responsible optimist. This will work well if. And I think the big part of that is trying to encourage everyone in your business to take part, to create ideas, feel part of this journey, and make sure that it's not being done to them, it's being done with their blessing as well.
Thank you. Mana.
I like this concept of responsible optimist. I could define myself as well like this. I think the key point is actually that technology is bringing so much good in our lives. I mean, generally speaking, the living standards have increased a lot. And hopefully, all these changes in the workforce will actually bring us, more free time to actually also enjoy life, just not only think about productivity. And in the end, I think from the HR perspective, it's also a matter, of mindset and reaching the type of, openness to change, which is probably the most difficult to achieve. It's not like skills that you train, and the skills of the future are very difficult to train actually, but it's a lot about the mindset and the fact that we should expect that, our professions, our working lives will change constantly.
Thank you. Andrea.
So it's clear that the fourth industrial revolution will completely change the enterprise environment at all levels, on every vertical and regardless of the industry. It will both increase the quality of the human workforce, but also the quality of the processes that are in place within that organization, and the mixed workforce structure, human and robots, will lead to a higher competition among humans as well. How can I teach my robot to become better than the other one, or my colleague's robot? So it will also be kind of a gamification between the trainers, the bot trainers.
And you're not?
For the ones which are pretty much my age, is, you know, I'll be back. So, I would say that indeed, I mean, automation and, you know, artificial intelligence, to speak it as a large, will be a fundamental milestone for our humankind society. And this is the way that we are going, and I mean the ship cannot be turned now. I mean with the advances are quite high, and basically we will go direction. I'll put only one, you know, because everything what has been mentioned before is valid. I'll put only one dimension that, you know, ethics will need to play a part, and here the ethical part is basically us humans, that we are creating the algorithm, at least for the time being. So basically, whenever we are creating the algorithm, we need to put the ethics there. Whenever the robots will start creating the algorithms, then we need to train, yes, the robots to have the ethic component as well, and hopefully also emotions.
Thank you. So what can I say before we close, actually, and we go for lunch? RPA is one of what the PwC calls the essential 8 technologies. So it's deeply associated with the fourth industrial revolution. What we encourage you to start, experiment with it, deploy it, because for sure your competitor will do it, and very soon you will be at a competitive disadvantage by not doing it. So let me thank the panel members, and a big round of applause for them. Thank you very much for accepting. And also, I want to thank to all of you who have participated and shown interest in being here today with us. Last but not least, thank you to the whole team who has made this possible. Catalina, Andrea, my entire team. Thank you very much. And now we have lunch, networking, and continuous interaction at the Tech Fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you.